ambient noise, yeah.
So now you're grabbing some band lab clips.
Yeah.
Now for me, that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out. Kind of.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, like stretching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the right
I
spot.
didn't even notice 40. I didn't even realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way. And welcome back, everybody, to the show that never ends. But this is another Thursday, so it's another day of talking IT with Glenn and Tony. And Tony's here. He'll be up front in just a moment, working on something in the back there. Once we get started, we're going to go ahead and kick into some of the videos that we have for today. We've got at least, I believe we have 4 different videos. We might get to all 4. We might just do 3 and do a little bit of playing around instead. So we'll figure it out when we get there. But in the meantime, happy Thursday to all.
Ah, there we go.
There he is.
Am I in? Did I make it?
You're hiding? There you are. You're hiding in the corner.
I was just getting this this tab shared special little present I got from Ange and Bill.
Nice. Ange and Bill, always a pleasure. Methinks it was a song of sorts, yes?
Yeah.
Ah.
A little birthday tune.
Happy birthday for Tony.
Yes, I'm closer to 100 than I am to 0.
Yeah. Isn't that fun?
I'm
Getting old. It happens. Hey, it beats the alternative, right?
Oh, I'm happy to have made it here.
Yep. Yeah, when I was young, I was pretty convinced I was not going to make it to this point, but here I am, with bells on.
That's what I got bells on.
I don't have them loaded up yet. I have a grand piano instead, so bells will be later. We do have drums, though. But how about a happy birthday, Tony, from Ange and Bill? Let's see what that's all about.
Okay, ready, Bill?
Are we gonna do a real happy birthday, or are we gonna do our own?
We're gonna do our own happy birthday.
We're gonna do our own happy.
Yes.
Happy time birthday time.
Happy time birthday time, Tony. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you, dear Tony. I hope you had a great day. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday's coming your way. Happy birthday, 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 happy birthday, birthday, birthday to you. Happy birthday, Tony, from Bill and me. Happy birthday to you, yes you see. Happy birthday, this is your day, and I hope many more come your way. Woo! Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday,
many more?
Oh, she milked that many for as many as she could.
Many, 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 many. Because that is how many. Happy birthday to Tony.
Oh, thank you guys.
Mm-hmm. And a great job on Bill and Ange doing a little birthday song for Tone.
Oh yeah, that's how I wish my birthday song always sounded like.
Yep. Something custom. Just for you. Definitely the way to go. Welcome to everybody in the chat there. I see we got some folks coming in here. Lazarus, Sosa. What's happening, everybody?
Yeah, good to see y'all.
On a happy Thursday. Now, some of the clips that we've got for today relate to guitar. And some of the stuff we have today is like EQ stuff, and some is about the AI stuff Tony found over there for some stable diffusion stuff. And something we knew, something about beginner guitarist stuff as well. And that's one that we have. We'd probably start with that one. And that was from Paul Davids. He's one of our favorite YouTube guys over here. And yeah, you want to go into 10 things I wish I knew as a beginner guitarist? And kick that off right now.
When it comes to learning guitar, we all have our own paths, our own victories, our own struggles. And looking back at my time as a beginner guitarist, take that away, please. Although, seeing that picture, there's quite a few things I miss from that time. Being so excited to learn even the easiest things. Hearing the thing you heard on the record, coming out of your own guitar. I mean, that's a magical feeling I probably won't ever relive with that same intensity. That makes me a bit nostalgic, the good old days, right? And I had the realization that there were quite a few things I would have wanted to tell my younger self when he was starting out. Just as a mentor, Sensei Paul as a voice in the back of your head. I'm sure he would have liked that if he would know how my chops are today. No, I don't think so. I asked the same question over at my Instagram. What advice would you have wanted to give yourself when you were a beginner? And the resemblances were striking. It's funny, we all realize the importance of certain things in a later stage in life. But it's never too late to stop doing the bad stuff and start doing it right. So let's get going. The absolute #1 thing is rhythm, timing, groove. And you might think rhythm isn't sexy, and if I do that sweet picking everyone praises me, but if I play in time, well, that doesn't impress my friends. First, find new friends. Second, let me illustrate the importance of it. Timing is like the foundation of a building. Even if you try to build the simplest things on it, if the foundation fails, everything falls apart. With great time, playing even the simplest things will sound so good. And with bad time, even the most complex things will sound terrible. There you have it, right? I would tell myself not to practice anything different really, because I did practice a lot of scales and songs back in the day, and I enjoyed it a lot, which is very important too, but at least play them with a metronome for maybe 15 minutes for every practice session. And I would tell myself to practice solos and improvisation with a click. Playing along with the song is not the same as doing it by yourself. The metronome really reveals the flaws in your time, so you can fix it, recalibrate your rhythm and your internal timing. That was really an eye-opener for me, and it would have saved me a lot of time fixing it later. #2, I'm seeing so many people regretting not taking the time to learn the notes on the neck earlier. And funny enough, you only have to do it once, and from there on out, everything will make so much more sense. Playing the same lick in different positions. So if your plan is to learn it eventually, better do it today so you can profit from it every minute going forward. And I see not knowing the notes on the neck a bit like walking in a big city clueless and trying to find the hotspots. Sometimes you might bump into a cool thing, but it took you forever to find, and it happened mostly by chance. Until someone hands you the map with all the sweet spots clearly marked. This makes navigating it so much more easier, right? You will be way faster at the destination. So learn them, and from there on out it will open your eyes and give you so much more insight in the guitar and the workings of the fretboard. If you're absolutely new to this and interested in it, you can always check out my music theory series here on YouTube, Or of course, check out my beginner course, Learn, Practice, Play, if you really want to dive all in, where we take a look at all these things in one package and how notes on the neck relate to chords, scales, etc, etc. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, for number 3, there is something that I have to tell myself over and over again, even to this date, and that is to sing with the guitar as you're playing the notes, especially when improvising or noodling. One commenter on Instagram said it brilliantly: spending time connecting the sound of the notes with your voice, and added the following: sing everything you play, and while you do that, the rhythm is more important than note pitch. And yes, 100%, this also helps me or those that are a little bit more insecure about their voice. It's not about making the voice sound nice, it's about really being in touch with the notes you play, and they come out from the heart instead of from the hand or something you remember that doesn't mean anything. Like this. I'm really insecure about this and I don't know if I will keep this in the final video. So this way you don't go down the road of mindless, meaningless noodling. And I'm sure we've all been there. The guitar is your voice and you're using your own voice to connect it to your mind, really. So I really should be doing this more, and I take an example out of my dear friend Mary Spender, who did it so beautifully in the guitar looping collab we did. Check it out. Alright, here's number 4, and I remember this so well. I was having my first guitar lesson and my teacher said, let's do an improv in A minor, and he started playing some cool chords and I started soloing and it sounded so beautiful. Probably not. Okay, so my best guess, I was probably playing the pentatonic scale, but what did he play? He was just playing some chords out of the blue and it sounded so nice together. Well, he probably knew how to harmonize the scale. This means you turn a scale into a set of chords that work so well together using just the notes from the scale. So for C major, it gives us the chords C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C major. And the same chords go for A minor, since that's the relative key. So all these chords will sound good together and you will be able to just use the A minor scale to solo over these chord changes. Just pick any of these chords, play them together, and there you have a backing track of your own. Of course, when you see this, you'll realize that you often see the same combination of chords over and over again, like the 4 magical chords played together. Next up, you're hanging with your friends by the campfire. You pick up the guitar and you start playing. People recognize the tune. Awesome. They start to sing along and the crowd is gathering. You're happy, they're happy, they love you. The tune builds to the chorus and everyone takes a good deep breath and starts singing. Because maybe. But then everyone stops and they stare at you. You look up awkwardly. Oops, you played the wrong chord. You actually only learned the verse and everyone laughs it off, but strangely enough, this was the last time you were ever invited to a party. You give up on guitar and became an assistant to the manager for a small paper company in Pennsylvania. But at night you dream of a different life you could be leading, because maybe if you took the time to also figure out the chorus, you would have toured the world with a mildly successful pop rock band. Who knows? So sad. Next up, I'm going to say a word and I'm actually scared to say it, no joke. Caged. Well, there we are. So the simplest explanation of caged is this. The F major chord is just the E major chord with the capo on fret 1. Is your mind blown? Well, it should be. And not only that, you can do it for every of the 5 open chord shapes. For the C, the A, the G, the E, and the D. Spelling out the magical word caged. So the B chord is just the A chord with the capo on fret 2. The E flat chord is just a capo on fret 3 playing the C shape. You see? So now just remove the capo from the equation, throw it out, use your fingers as a capo, and there you have it. Cage is a way to visualize the fretboard where we can find our chords all over the neck, our target notes for solos and scales. It helps out massively with voice leading, inversions, you name it, it does it. I made 2 full-length videos going deeper into Cage since it's one of my biggest roadmaps for understanding the neck. So check it out over here. So at number 7, here's one filtered from over 1,250 comments on Instagram. Thank you so much for that, by the way. So many comments were about music theory, anything from basic understanding of music theory to struggles to learn about what makes a chord a 7th chord, and from figuring out how triads work to not learning just the song but understanding the theory behind it and applying it to your own playing. And it's funny because the folks that really have an aversion towards learning theory are often the ones that never learned it. So, I mean, I'm down with people not learning theory, sure, if it's not your thing, it's not your thing, but don't hate people that just love doing it. So let's quickly try to answer some of these questions in 1 minute. So every major, minor, sus2, sus4, diminished, augmented chord is called a triad, and they are made out of 3 unique notes. Even when you play a C major chord using 5 strings, it's just 3 unique notes, the C, the E, and the G. These are the 1st, the 3rd and the 5th note from the major scale. And if you use different notes, the 1, the 4 and the 5, we get a sus4 chord. A 1, a 2 and a 5, we get a sus2 chord, and so on and so on. Now for 7th chords, we don't use the 1, the 3 and the 5, but we add the 7th note from the major scale, for example, that will be the B. We add that to the triad and we get a 7th chord, C major 7th. If we add a different note, the flat 7, we get a C 7th. Now I'm also omitting the 5th from the chord because we don't really need a 5th to make the chord sound like a C 7th chord. So that's the first one to go. We have only 6 strings, so sometimes we've got to pick the right ones. If we want to make stranger combinations like C sus4 and a flat 7, we get a C 7 sus4. Or what about a C major 7 sus2? Sus2 chord and add the B major 7th. Anyway, now you just have to learn all the formulas for every chord, and it's not that hard because there's a great deal of logic to it. Mostly. Anyway, that's it. Super exciting. It's so much fun. Let's continue. Oh yeah, this is nice. Next up, number 8. So this is a comment that sums it up nicely. The instrument doesn't make a great player. And wow, this hits home really hard. If you get a better guitar, you won't be a better guitar player. I always linked getting new gear to a phase of learning I was in. So when I got my first Fender Strat, I was heavily into playing stuff like John Mayer, Stevie Ray and Hendrix. I did that on my Les Paul for a long time, and getting that Strat, it really ignited that road even further. It was like an accelerator. But I see it happen the other way around way more often. So I want to play like Stevie Ray Vaughan, let's buy a Strat. No, don't do that, because if you really wanted, you would have been playing Stevie Ray all along. On whatever guitar you had lying around. I have seen people play the song Scuttle Button, you know, that crazy fast blues riff. I made a whole video about, check it out over here. Anyway, I heard people just rip that song on the acoustic guitar because that's the only guitar they had. Gear is good, gear is fun. Good gear is always better than bad gear, but in my experience, it only works as an accelerator and never as an igniter. Alright, next, lucky number 9, sticking to the box. And one commenter on Instagram said, mixing major and minor pentatonic. And this was such an eye-opener for me too, it's funny. When I started out learning guitar, I had no rules. Nothing was holding me back from playing weird-ass stuff. And this resulted into a lot of remarkable things I probably don't want anyone to ever hear, but also in a careless and unique approach to note-chord relations. Then I started learning scales and boxes and patterns. And of course, they provided me lots and lots of valuable information and guidelines. But also there lies the danger of taking these too strictly. These are the note choices we've got and that's it. No, it's not, it's never. There are no wrong notes. Say it with me. There are no wrong notes. Oh, hey Ben.
Oh, hey Paul.
Wait, could you help me demonstrate this? Okay, so Ben was playing all 12 notes, jamming over an A Dorian vibe, and It sounded amazing. And did you realize he did not play one single wrong note? There are no wrong notes. Thank you, Ben. That was awesome. Okay, here at number 10, and this might sound weird, but it's learn to play kids songs or birthday songs or old classic folk songs or something along those lines. It's the tunes we all know. Happy Birthday, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Old MacDonald Had a Farm, and what have you. And not just the chords, well, sure, play the chords, but also try playing the melody and the chords together. Like, or even better, why not try playing a fingerstyle version of it? So nice. It's seriously a lot of fun to play. But I get it. When you're just starting out, you want to play the things that made you pick up the guitar in the first place. And sure, you better try them out because they're a lot of fun too, and taking that deep dive is just the way to go. But all these tunes are the perfect starting point to get in that kind of playing. Like fingerstyle, like chords, like playing the chords and the melodies together. Because the melodies and chords are so nicely intertwined, and they often are very classic sounding progressions and resolutions that we see very often even in today's music. Talking about that, I've been cooking up an acoustic guitar course for the past months and it's almost ready to launch. March 24th, the doors will open. It takes you from being that campfire guitar player who forgot about the chorus to a well-rounded acoustic guitar player that can play anything from fingerstyle to cool strumming to flat picking in styles like the blues, country and pop and rock and more. And we're covering all things that in my experience make a great acoustic guitar player. Check it out at acousticadventure.com where you can already see a sneak peek of what's coming up and be the first one to be notified when the course opens up, and I'm really excited for that. Before we go, I'd love to hear from you what your tips would be, either for yourself or for other beginners. Did you have some aha moments where things just started to click all of a sudden? Things you wish you knew sooner? I'd love to check them out, so leave them in the comments below. Have a lovely day, and remember, it's never too late to stop doing the bad things and start doing it right. Cheers.
Nice.
Oh,
Yep.
that was a great one.
Yeah, and never too late to start doing it right. I mean, ending off on that note is important too. You know, having bad habits. Everybody's got bad habits. You know, in one way or another. With you know, especially self-taught musicians, they end up with a lot of bad habits. Whether it's picking efficiency, what fingers you use for things. I mean, there's no absolute right answer. Like everything has to be right for the individual because different people have different needs, different things that may make it easier for them to do this than to do that. So it's important to customize your experience to what you need.
Yeah, and I like that he reminded them that, like, it's not the instrument that makes the musician.
That's another big one, yeah.
Yeah, number 8, super important to remind yourself of.
Yep. If you can get nice toys are good. But again, like, don't think that going from what you have to the nice toys are going to make that big of a difference. The other big thing is, even if you can only afford or only have low-end instruments, let's say, there are things that we can do to make them play better. You can make a $100 guitar play like a $1,000 guitar with a few minor adjustments in most cases, because the $100 guitar a lot of times just never was set up properly. A lot of times the right parts are there, they're assembled correctly, they're in the right places, but nobody took the time, the love, the care to actually dial everything in just the way it should be. The action's got to come down this much, the neck has to be at this angle, the frets need to be clearing by this much. You get all of those metrics and figure it all out. And again, it doesn't have to be a right answer or wrong answer thing. It can be, I want it a little bit lower, see how it feels. Oh, that low, now all of a sudden I'm getting fret buzz. So you come back up a little bit. You have to find what works, again, for you and your situation and your instrument. But the intonation, the setup stuff is really important for turning what would be a lower end instrument into, to have it play like a higher end instrument.
Oh yeah, a great guitarist will make a crappy guitar sound good.
Yep.
But a great guitar will not make a crappy guitarist sound good.
Yep, exactly.
Hey,
Exactly.
Uni, great to have you. Oh, and Uni has been on a Led Zeppelin run the last couple of days. Yeah,
Love some Zeppelin. Yeah.
Oh, he's got away with doing Robert Plant.
Nice. I can imagine.
Love the one I heard earlier.
I've actually been away from the lab, so I haven't caught anything in the last couple of days, but I will catch back up over the next few, especially over the weekend.
That was Paul Davids. You can find him over at YouTube.
Excellent resource.
Davids. And I mean, let's get him to 4 million subscribers.
Yeah,
He's
absolutely.
on a roll.
Yep. And even just looking over at the videos page he's got there, I mean, just so many things. Like you could just scroll for hours on, all the different types of stuff that he has available. And whether it's lessons, whether it's just cool nuggets, whether it's things like this, where it was, things that people wrote in about because it was things that, beginner guitarists wanted to know. People were curious, and he kind of distilled all that down to get the most useful ones and went from there. Nice. Communication breakdown, dazed and confused. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Favorite solos, guitar types, intros. I mean, yeah, you name it, he's got it on there. And that's, again, this is one of a dozen different resources I really like on YouTube for guitar stuff specifically. Another one is Stitch Method. We'll probably be looking at some of his things, one of his videos later on today.
Oh yeah, we have looked at Stitch.
Yep. One of my favorites from Stitch is one on the Jerry Garcia feel and things like that. He has a really good overview, a really good dive into how to get that sound. It doesn't necessarily tell you how to play like Jerry, but it can help you to get that sound into your playing.
Yeah, what I like with him is he really dives deep into the technique and the attitude of the player. Because it's not always just the notes that they're playing, it's the way that they play them.
Absolutely. And actually, that's one of the big things in this one. One of the videos we watched some time ago, we might have just been in the back room, like offline or whatever, but it was with the Oscar Peterson trio, and it was with Oscar Peterson on the piano and 2 upright basses playing. And one of the things that you notice when you're listening to it is that you actually hear Oscar Peterson singing sometimes, and he's not singing to try to sing, because his voice is not good, let's just say. I mean, he's not hitting the same notes that he's trying to, but he's getting that feel across, and he's more singing just to keep himself phrasing-wise, doing the spacing that he wants. And we're going to get into that with the Stitch video later. But yeah, the speech-influenced phrasing, exactly. That's one of the videos. I think that might be the one that we're watching, actually, a little bit later. So spoiler alert. But it's got some of that stuff in there.
Got a whole bunch of cool shit lined up.
Exactly. And the other question is for the guitar itself. Like, I have my guitar over here, but I'm not sure. I'm still getting a little bit of buzz from before. So let me see if that's all gone away. I was working with the cameras also to get those get it lined up in a better way. It's like I can hear right there. It should be good. But if I play loud, I might get a little buzz. No. Seems okay here. A little bit of reverb on it almost. There's a little buzz. When I slide up like that.
I'm a little buzzed.
Yeah, nice. And what he was saying about the cage system is super important. Like Tony was saying, that is one of the biggest things. Is if I had to go back to my beginner guitarist self and kind of show myself something. Like, I had the pentatonic scale, so that was one of the things I had going for me, was getting comfortable with the pentatonic, at least in the root position, the box 1 minor pentatonic that he was talking about in the video, with that G minor pentatonic. And it's just having that, and then going into the cage system, seeing how the stationary chords, like, again, this is the C chord that you would normally play open, which, again, my hands are way down here, so you can't see it. I'd have to switch to, let's see if this one's any better. I have a feeling this one's also going to be a little bit low. Yeah, I'm down here.
Show us your hands.
Yeah. I do have to change the other camera. Not quite. We didn't get quite that far. But when we're doing, like, just, for example, that C chord that I was doing. Getting this shape. And then if you're going to move that somewhere else, like, you don't have to necessarily use the entire chord. A lot of times you'll use it where you're just taking 2 or 3 of the notes, or 4 of the notes. These middle 4, for example, is one of the better implementations that I like. The thumb is just kind of, I have it over the top to mute out that low E string, and I'm also using my pinky a little bit to mute out that low E string, but I'm just using those middle 4. What I like about that shape especially is that it's a root, a major third, a 5, and a root, all stacked properly, so it sounds the way you would expect it to sound, like if it was a piano chord.
Yep. Said that's a C or an E.
This one I just moved somewhere random, actually, so I'm just at the 8th fret, so this would be a C in this position. But that's the C shape, and you can do that with any chord. Like, if I were to move that up a whole step, then that same shape would now be a D major, whereas on the keyboard you'd have to be playing it differently. But for me, it would be just the same, the same shape that we were doing, which was just this one, and this one. So the same shape going up a whole step brings us from a C to a D. And again, on the guitar, that's what makes it easy, the little claws. Once you get that claw, the 5 of them, the movable C shape was that one. The movable A shape is one of the most common. This is one of the early ones people learn because it's just a bar. You bar, you're basically hitting that second string, the A string, and then barring the next 3, leaving out the fat string and the skinny string, and just playing the 4 in the middle again. But this one is a nice movable bar that's very, very easy because you're just hitting, a 3 bar and the 1 above it, 2 frets back. So that's the movable A shape. Movable E shape, the open E shape is way down here with all of these. I halfway fall out of my chair to show that. But if I do it up here at the 12, like a movable E shape, it's the same chord, but it's so much closer together. Like again, the frets are so much tighter. So like if I did it as an A chord, let's say, we're barring this whole thing on the 5th fret and then using the shape of the E shape. I don't use the movable G as much. That one, for the G chord, normally people are playing it way at the end of the neck again. But using that shape, you're just trying to use the root, the 3rd and the 5 or the first 3 notes. It doesn't really matter where you are. You're still getting that same. And if you wanted to make it minor, you would just slide the middle finger back. But it's not as comfortable for me in that position, so I usually go with the E, movable E, and the movable A is the primary ones that I focus on because they are most common and the ones that people use the most. Let me adjust my camera back over here.
Now, he'd mentioned using a capo at one point and then said,
Yep.
do it with your hand instead.
Yep. Using a hand instead of a capo, and that's exactly what that is using the bar. When we're barring chords like that, we're using the bar as if it was a capo.
Yeah,
And instead we're just using our hand as the capo.
Get your hand comfortable being the capo, and then you
Make
don't
everybody-
need one.
Getting everybody dizzy gimbling my camera around here. All right, that's a little better. We'll try that. Yeah.
And
So
when you are the capo yourself, you have that flexibility of moving it around. Where if you're using an actual one, you've got to move it.
Yep. But with the capo, there is a certain bit of magic that they like to do with the capo. Let me go back to this for a second here.
Yeah, it's a transposing wand is the way I like to think of it. It basically just allows you to transpose on the fly.
One of the big things is that it lets you do, like if you were just doing, again, the open caged chords that we were talking about before, the C, A, G, E, and D. If you're doing the open chords, you're just doing, again, I'm trying to adjust the camera so we can actually get the full hand in there. There we go. So C shape is the open C shape. You're actually playing 2 open strings, which are the skinniest and the 3rd skinniest. The way that chord stacks, you're doing a C, E, G, C, and E. So you're doubling up on the root and the 3rd on the top of the chord, the way that you build it on the guitar. But that's the C. For the A shape, if you wanted to play A C chord with the movable A shape, same notes, same 4 notes as you're doing, but it sounds different. Because this one you get that high note for starters, and over here you're just getting it's the same note, but it sounds a little different because it's on a different string, and you're only playing those 4 notes instead of 5. Now I can play that same C chord with the movable E shape at the 8th fret down here, and now we're using 6 notes because we're barring across all 6 with the big bar, and then playing that movable E shape, which is the same as this was down here, and just moving it all the way up here and barring it. Like I was saying. So that's the E shape. That's the most common that you'll see. The ones that people usually learn first are going to be that E shape and that A shape. And just going back and forth on the same fret, you can hear you're going from like the 1 chord to the 4 chord. And if you want to go to the 5 chord, slide up 2 frets. So if you're playing a 1-4-5 song, it's nice and easy to just be where you are, that fret, movable E shape, movable A shape, up 2 frets, and then back. And that's just one of the easy ways to move around. And by using those same movable chord shapes, those are all major chords. If you wanted to change those to minor, it actually makes it easier for some of them, where this one, the movable E shape, to make it minor, you literally just lift that middle finger off and you leave that bar down, so the middle finger is not playing anything, and I'm just fretting these other two notes on the 5th and 4th strings while barring everything. So that actually makes the chord shape easier. Whereas if you're doing that A shape and you want to go minor, you put the middle finger on there, where it looks like that movable E shape, just down a string. And now in this case, this is a minor, where this would be F minor. From But that's, getting into the whole purpose of the cage system is that you can also, what I was saying about a capo is if I put a capo on the 3rd fret and now just did all of those same open shaped chords that we were talking about before, and just did them considering the 3rd fret to be 0, I could use those same open chords that I already know from the cage system, and now I'm just playing them in G instead of playing them in E, like I would be if I was playing them open. So it's another way of using a capo. You can kind of cheat. That's one way that people will do that, where, oh, what's the song in? Song's in A. Okay, I can capo on the 5th fret if the song's in A major. And now it's just, you got your A major, and your B minor, and your C minor, major, major.
And if you're putting the capo on the 3rd fret, then you're basically transposing a whole step and a half up.
Correct. Yep. 3.5 steps up. Yep. Or step and a half, just like you said. And that's going from that, so that instead of basing everything on E major with E and A, going over here, you're now playing in G and C. Just by using those same shapes, though. So it's really the important thing for the thing that I was trying to get out of it here is the A and the E shape, or the E and the A shape, are the two big ones that you can really get a ton of mileage out of on the guitar because of the fact that they're movable, because you're using the bar, because they're relatively easy, and they're easy to switch back and forth between. It makes it easy to go back and forth between a 1 and a 4 in a song, or if the 1 is up top, that becomes the 5. So it depends on where you start.
That's a Bill riff. I've heard Bill do that.
Oh yeah, you've heard Bill do that. And you also hear people hammer on, where you're barring this whole thing, and then hammering on these other 3. And that's just a cool one that adds a little something different.
Yes, I've heard Jimmy Page do that.
Yep, and you can do the same down here, but it's a little bit weirder. Harder to get the hammer on those 3. But you can hammer on any of these chords to try to change them up and make them a little bit different. But just with those little shapes, you can do all of the major, all the major chords that you need to for songs. And if you just make those adjustments on the movable E shape to make it minor, you just lift that middle finger off. That's the only note that changes because there's only 1/3 in that shape. So you only have to worry about moving that one note from a major to a minor. And then from the A shape, you're actually just bringing that middle finger back in. And the other thing that's interesting about that, for me, like the way I play the movable A shape, I'm only playing for the middle 4 strings. I don't play the highest string, just because when I'm doing this bar, I have a hard time leaving that one open without hitting it with my finger. So I only play a 4-note chord there. But if I go to A minor, then that opens it back up. Note in there. It has the exact same claw as the E major movable shape, just move down a string. So that's one of the things that relates also, is the E major movable shape is the A minor movable shape, just moved down a string. Makes it nice and easy to go back and forth. When you actually have a guitar in your hands, it's easy to go back and forth between them. But we don't have to spend too much time going back and forth on me playing with the guitar. We can do other things as well.
Doing E minor to A major?
No, the shapes actually. The shape was E minor, but it was A major. It was A major as the E shape, and then D minor.
Oh,
yeah. Because I was doing it at the 5th fret. So that's a D minor and an A major. Well, we could do both as minor as well. I was kind of goofing around a little bit with those. But let me put
D
this
to
back
the A
down.
major sounds good.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, and I also liked his emphasis on there are no bad notes. That was
Yep.
another good tip
It's a
that
good observation,
we
tip, yeah.
sometimes forget.
Yep. That was another one from Victor Wooten as well, where he had a whole a whole video that he was doing where he was talking about there are no bad notes, or any bad note that you were to find, there's a good note on either side. So if you look just to the left or just to the right of where you are, if you're on a bad note, both of those other notes work, because there's, when you're dealing with a diatonic scale, at least, dealing with C major, A minor, those kinds of scales, there are no notes in the scale that are more than a half a step away from a good note if you're in one of the bad notes, because there's only 5 technically wrong notes, but not that there are wrong notes.
You saw as he was giving the example, when he was hitting those sharps, the half steps that would have been considered the bad notes, the way he approached them were as transitional notes.
Yep. And just in the way that you use them, and working back and forth between a good note and a bad note, or a bad note and a good note. Like if you were playing an A minor pentatonic, those are all your good notes. All the rest of them are technically not in there, so there's 7 notes that you're not using. But you can throw any of them in, especially if you're just doing a little line. And you'll notice it sounds different. It sounds like it doesn't belong, sounds exotic, but that one, in that case, it doesn't sound wrong, even though that was an F in an A minor pentatonic. Usually you go right to the G. That's the F sharp. And it's just a different sound. It technically is not in that scale, so it could be considered a wrong note, but again, they say shouldn't be, there shouldn't really be any wrong notes depending on how you play them. It's about the intent, it's about what you play them,
How you use
what you put into them.
Yeah.
And how you use them. Yep. And the seven modes of any given key, like Uni's saying, that's what he was talking about originally, where if you're in the key of C major, you're doing the C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B half diminished, and C major. And that's just all the white notes, but just using that same claw, kind of like with the guitar, but using that same claw to do every other note. And just walking your way up. Yeah, we know that song.
It goes to the B. I went up to
Goes
the
to the
G.
B. I go to the B just at that one part there. Lean on me. And the reason that the G also works, I mean, technically it probably is a G chord that you're using there, where the G is the 1 and the B is the 3rd. So those are like 2 of the strongest sounds that you would expect in that moment. And on a good night, the notes don't matter. Yeah, you could be doing slides and glides and crunches and whatever you hit. Some of them sound good, some of them sound crazy, some of them are, wow, I can't believe he chose to do that. And it's like, chose? Well, I wouldn't necessarily say I chose to do that. I did that.
And you're never going to find what sounds crazy unless you try.
Yeah, absolutely. The exploration, that was a good one. At the end, when he finished off with like the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Happy Birthday, any of those kinds of songs where you know it in your bones how the song goes. So if you just sit down and try to play and say, hey, what if I wanted to make it the fanciest song ever? And you try to turn Twinkle Twinkle Little Star into the fanciest song that you can imagine. That's another one that's, yep. Oh. Yep, Root 5/6.
Oh, 1/5.
Mm-hmm. Just like that.
Inch. I figured out Twinkle Twinkle.
Twinkle, twinkle, little Tony.
It's not just Kira who can play it.
And it's about, if you were trying to make it fancy or trying to add, chords in there like that major 7. And then when you get to that F, you could do F major 7. When you get to that G, doing a G7, where we're using the F instead of the F sharp, because that's in that same key of C, and then back to the C. So sometimes the 7th sounds nice, sometimes it sounds extra. Doesn't sound like it resolves as well on that 7 at the end.
And like you've mentioned in the past, where you utilize the 7th, whether you're using it straight up or you've got the 7th playing down at the bottom, you get a very different sound.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's why a lot of times they would even specify that if you're looking at sheet music or tab, they would specify that as a slash chord. So they would have it where, for example, if you took that C7, let's say, so we're doing C, E, G, and B. If we put the B on the bottom it does sound very different because the B and the C are right next to each other. Or we could even, like that way, I would call that a crunch chord, where you're bringing all the notes really tight together, and it sounds kind of a little weird, but they'll call that an E. Technically, they should call that let's say an E minor flat 6 over B, but technically it would be a C major 7 over B, because we're just taking the C major 7 shape that we have here, and then dropping that B to the bottom. But it could be that to do that with the B on the bottom, I would also sometimes move the C to the top. So now you got the B, E, G, and C. So even just using 4 notes with the, again, they're calling it an E minor flat 6 over B, but doing B, E, G, and C, it's all the same 4 notes as that C major 7 that we did this way, but spreading everything out a little bit. And it sounds a little different because it sounds like the B on the bottom makes it sound like that's the root rather than the C now. That's one of the things about slash chords, is it makes the chords sound much different because it sounds like a different note is probably the root of the chord you're looking at, because of the fact that the lowest note, your brain is used to considering the lowest note to be the root. So when you play inversions, your mind isn't necessarily thinking like this is a C, this is also a C, but they would consider it like an E, technically a C over E, and then a C over G.
I thought a slash chord was a Guns N' Roses chord.
Yep, it depends on which one. But yeah, he uses a bunch. He's got some good ones in there. But yeah, anytime they use that slash, it's to tell you that you're using that chord, but you're doing an inversion, where you're just using a different note on the bottom than you'd be expecting. And that sometimes is important for the way the melody goes. Sometimes it's important so that the chord sounds like, okay, this one's lower than that one was, so you have a descending motion of chords because you're now going down a little bit when you go from one to the next. So that's one of the ones to watch out for in sheet music, but it's not one to be like alarmed at. Like when you see something over something, it's like, uh-oh, there's a slash in there, what am I supposed to do? It's just take that first chord, and then you'll see that the note that's after the slash is also in that chord. Just make that the lowest note, and then you just cheated your way into doing slash chords, no problem.
And
so whatever kind of, if you can make the original chord, you can make it a slash chord.
You know what's cool is whether you're a guitarist or not, a lot of that advice and those tips apply to other instruments.
Oh yeah, it's more like music advice in general, where some of them, some of it translates. Again, like same with hand grips on the piano and hand grips on the guitar. They don't do quite the same things, but you can use them in the same way. Like once you have that 1-3-5 under your belt, you can be playing that with your thumb, middle, and pinky. You can play that with your first 3 fingers, the thumb, index, middle. You can play it with thumb, index, ring finger. It all depends on what you're trying to do. I like to play triads like that with thumb, index, and middle, and that leaves the ring and pinky open to do other things higher. But a lot of people would rather keep fingers open in the middle to be able to do like where you're just playing around with that like sus4 and sus2. Basically going from the triad then to the sus2 to the sus4 back to the triad. And you can just keep those outer 2 held down. Yep. It's a journey. That's exactly where that stuff comes from. And that's a question of hand position that makes that easier. If I was holding these 3 notes with my thumb, index, and middle, then I wouldn't be able to do that little, move that you were just doing there, because that wouldn't quite fit. Like my fingers aren't in the right place for it. Yeah. So a lot of times the different fingerings, enable or make impossible certain things that you're trying to do. Hey, what's up, Cal? Good to see you, man. Over on the Facebook.
Oh, Cal came in through Facebook, huh?
Yep.
Wait a minute, you're on Facebook?
Oh, I'm not on Facebook. There's a consolidated chat that comes in through Restream.
I was gonna say.
But you can tell it came in through Facebook because it's got a little F sitting there in the icon. When you go over to the chat, you can tell it came in through Facebook because it's got a little. I know that guy.
I looped Glenn.
I know that guy. I sound a lot like that guy. I probably look like him too. Oh no. But that's all right. But yeah, so it comes down to, again, like the claws are being used for different things. In the case of the piano, the claw keeps you going, keeps you in the key that you're playing in. So if we're playing in C major, those are the chords that all work in C major, which again, it's a major chord, a minor chord, there's a half diminished in there.
On the keyboard, the claws are a piece of cake.
Yep. And
Don't
same
even
thing.
have to look.
And once you get it on the guitar, same thing happens where like I can play that movable E shape and movable A shape, both in the major or the minor versions, anywhere I want, looking or not looking. You can just kind of find your way to the note that sounds right and then just make it into the chord. That's one of the things when I'm trying to figure out a song. Like you'll see me, try to dial in a song that I've never heard before. It's playing and I can hear how the progression goes around. Like I'll listen at first. I don't even want to touch notes when I'm first trying to figure out a song. First thing I want to do is hear where the repeat happens. Okay, I can hear that there's 4 chords and then it comes back around. So okay, now I know and I can get a feel for, is that a 1-6-4, 2-5? Is that a 1-5-6-4? Like what's going on with the progression? I can usually get a good idea of what the motion is between the chords and which one should be the root, and just kind of work from there. Like as soon as I get that one landing, land on that one, make that into a major chord, and land that and see if that feels right. And if it does, then you're off to the races, because then the other guesses that I had are probably right or probably really close. And so I can just immediately just jump right in those 4 chords, and now it's just remembering to make those changes. But you've got it locked in the first few moments just by basically finding, hitting notes that are either right or wrong, trying to match the sound that you're hearing. Oh, higher or lower? Okay, higher. Okay, that one, yeah. That one, that's the one. Okay, and that's minor. Oh, no. Okay, it's major. And you figure out what sounds right, and you just go from there.
Yeah, and progression recognition is something I want to improve on. Like,
yeah.
Right now I'm trying to get pitch recognition, solid, but progression recognition really helps when you're trying to figure out a song. If you can recognize that, like 1-6-5-4 kind of instantly, that's where learning speeds up.
Oh yeah, and one that they were talking about, it might have even been on Paul's channel. It was talking about the creep progression, but it was going, let's say, from it was like a 1 major 3, 1 major 3 major 4 minor 4. So you're basically going from, let's say, a C major to an E major to an F major to an F minor. And so just getting, like, that's not the kind of feel that you would expect. C major?
I just did.
They probably use different inversions, but this is just
Jar
a...
of Hearts, Christina Perry. I just did
Okay.
a new version of that last week.
And that's one of the songs using that progression.
The exact chord progression.
Nice. Hi, Makeda. What's happening? That's funny because, like, again, when it comes down to progression, it's like no one's going to write a new progression because there's only those 7 chords to work with, really, unless you're borrowing chords and doing strange things with chords. If you just want to use the chords that are in the key, you've got those 7 chords to work with, and we don't like talking about the 7 chord. So we just usually deal with those first 6. Because you're an asshole. I did? Oh my God. How did I do that?
See, only Glenn can pull that off, and sometimes Ange.
Sometimes. Yes, indeed. But it's one of those things. I do see names a lot, and I do try to throw them out there when I see them. And I see something like Unicorn Made Frankenstein. See, I can pronounce that too. Made. Made Frankenstein. And Mahaputra. But yeah, good stuff, man. And when it comes to the claws, again, the claws in the keyboard are different than with the guitar, but once you get those couple of claws down, again, if you could get the movable E shape and movable A shape in a major and a minor form on the guitar with just those 4 chords, you can do so much with so many songs. Like most of what you hear in most styles of music, you'd be set, like just doing that. And that's, there's ways to spice it up, there's ways to make it different, but that could get you to where you're actually kind of locking in on everything. And being able to then expand from there and say, ooh, I hear a note that sounds weird. We're playing an A minor. But there's a note that sounds weird. Oh, it's that one. Okay, well, it's a tritone. An E flat in the middle of an A minor thing. And that's from something I recognize too. Most definitely, I know that that's somewhere. Somebody used that. But that's just, again, using that flat 5 in a minor pentatonic situation there. But it's a note that's not usually in there, but that's one where you can put in that blue note between the 4 and the 5. And that's doing a root 3, 4, and 5. 7 root. Yep. And you could do all 3 of those that are together too, the D, the E flat, and the E. For that, I sneak my thumb under, actually.
Yeah, that really gives it a little twist.
Mm-hmm. Because then you're getting that 5 in there as well. Getting the 5, the flat 5, and the 4. And that technically that could be the sharp 4 or the flat 5, but the tritone, the note that is the least consonant or most dissonant, one of the most. The other one would be the flat 2. The note right next door also sounds very tension, exactly. Lots of tension in that note. And that's why a lot of times those crunch chords where you have 2 notes that are right next to each other, they just kind of rub, and you don't necessarily want that, but there are situations where you would want that.
If you're looking for tension, you get a little bit of it there.
Exactly.
If you want to spin around,
Yep.
that gets you feeling disorientated.
Yep. And if you wanted to do just, chromatic, you can just, we wanted the sound to get higher and higher, but you don't want it to, be a certain key. And you just kind of bounce up and down and do whatever you like. Or, but when you're doing that, now you're doing diatonic again.
You see a lot more of that in, expressive compositions, cinematic stuff, cartoons.
Emotional stuff, yeah.
Especially the old school cartoons where, a lot of it was orchestrated.
Oh, I love old school cartoon music for sure.
They'd be doing that all the time.
Trying to build tension and stuff, yeah. Climbing the stairs? Sneaking up the stairs? Sneak your way.
Or like Family Guy, riding on a bus.
There you go.
Yeah, he wished for, I wish I had my own backing soundtrack. So, the genie would make music for him, no matter what he was doing. And
he always had the theme song going. Hey, what's up, Rolo?
It's a good exercise for a musician to do, to try to score, to something like that.
Score.
Yeah.
Score. So I'm thinking that we're gonna score. I'm trying to think of which video we should do next, because it's been about an hour now, so we should probably do a little break time here. Rolling right around. We already got the Paul David's video in, so maybe one of the ones that you grabbed there. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, the EQ secrets. That's actually one that I'm hoping might give me some tips on something I'm working on.
Nice.
And
Let's check
this is
that
a new
out.
Guy. Yeah, this one I just came across earlier today. New YouTuber that I'm now following.
Excellent. Bring it on.
Hey everyone, Cole Capperin here. Thank you for stopping by for another video. In my earlier years of producing and mixing music, I saw some charts, some frequency charts that really helped me out and helped me know what to look for, helped me know what frequencies to adjust to accomplish a particular goal. But today in this video, I think we can actually beat these frequency charts, and we're gonna do a little bit more of an interactive style frequency chart in which you are going to hear all the different frequency ranges and exactly what they do as we boost and as we cut. So by the end of this video, you should have a much deeper understanding of how to EQ vocals to accomplish the goal that you're actually after. Now today I will be actually recording these voiceover vocals on my Neumann TLM-67. This has become one of my favorite microphones that I have, and so the entire voiceover that you'll be hearing will be done on this Neumann TLM-67. And as always, if you like anything you see or hear in this video, there will be links in the description below to go check it out. Those links go to Sweetwater. I get all of my gear from Sweetwater and have for many, many years now. Sweetwater sponsors all of these videos, and I very, very much appreciate it. So if you enjoy this style of content, you want to support the channel, I'd very much appreciate it if you use those links in the description. And once you're on the site, after clicking one of those links, you can purchase anything you want, not just the things that are listed there, and it will really go a long ways to help support the channel and help me keep making content just like this. Thank you so much to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. It means a lot. Okay, let's jump in and let's start taking a listen to these frequencies. Okay, the first thing that I want to point out is that these are just suggestions for what different frequency points and how they affect a vocal. I'm not suggesting that you should always cut or always boost any of these frequency ranges. So the most important thing is to use your ears. Don't just boost or cut something because you like a result that you heard in this video, because it's going to be different for every vocal that you worked on, for the voice, for the microphone, for the signal chain, for everything. Okay, 100 hertz. 100 hertz to me is the lowest end of warmth. Now, I would usually high pass everything below 100 hertz, but 100 hertz is what gives you that radio announcer voice, that thick, deep, rumbly kind of thing. When I go real deep in my voice here, this is 100 hertz that's really getting boosted right now. Now, this also plays into the warmth of a vocal. This is like the lowest frequency point of warmth. So when you cut 100 hertz, not only are you taking away that low end, but you're also seemingly enhancing the upper mid-range and the top end. So every time you boost something, you can boost just that frequency range. But if you cut that something, not only are you just taking it away, but oftentimes you're giving the illusion that something else is being boosted because of the relationship between those frequencies. Now, 200 hertz again is just warmth to me. The more you boost 200 hertz, the warmer the vocal is on almost everyone, and the more you cut 200 hertz, the less warm or sometimes the more harsh a vocal is. Now, this is a little different based on the voice that you're working on. Higher end male voices and most female voices don't have a lot of 100 hertz frequency range in them. Not a lot of 100 hertz information in them, and so 200 on a female or a high male voice is usually the point in which that's where the warmth and where the body lies. Now, the next frequency range is 300 to 500 hertz. In this frequency range is often where a vocal can sound kind of boxy and a little honky, and like the room sound can really live in this frequency range. And so this is not a frequency range that I do a lot with often, but if a vocal does sound particularly boxy, this frequency range can do a lot to tame that. I will almost never boost this frequency range, but I do cut this halfway off. 600 hertz to 1K. This is just kind of low mid-range to me. There's not really any characteristic in this frequency range. However, this is just kind of low mid-range, and sometimes this plays a little bit into warmth as well. But if you boost this frequency range, it can get a little boxy and it can get a little honky sounding, but you don't want to cut too much of this out because this is where a lot of the body of the vocal lives. Now, 1.5 to 2.5K is to me where like the presence of a vocal is. If you take, let's say right in the middle, let's say a 2K boost, and you're listening to a vocal in a mix and you push 2K up, that vocal will pop out through that mix. But if there's not enough of this information, then the vocal kind of can disappear in a mix. But if there's too much of it, then the vocal can sound really kind of nasally and honky sounding. And so this is a frequency range that's extremely important in every vocal, but there's not any right or wrong answer as to boost or to cut. Sometimes you do nothing, but this is a very important frequency range to pay attention to. Now, 2.5 to 3.5K is often where the nasaliness of a vocal is, the sinus cavity of a vocal. So if I boost that frequency range here, you can hear how much more nasally my voice becomes. And if you cut this, you do lose presence, but you also lose some of that nasal character. And so this is a good example of what I was talking about between the last two frequency ranges here, how they both kind of play into each other. This is also the presence frequency range, but more specifically like the nasally part of the presence of a vocal. 4K, maybe my least favorite frequency. And when I say least favorite, what I mean is if there's too much 4K, it never sounds good in my opinion. Now, this is again a frequency range that is extremely important because our ears, most people's ears, are most sensitive to 4K. Reason why it's one of the most important, because too little 4K takes away the intelligibility of the voice. It is harder to hear what someone's saying and understand what they're saying if there's not enough 4K. But if there's too much 4K, it's harsh. That's usually where the harshness of a vocal, the piercing quality of a vocal, is usually in that 4K range. Very important that you get this right. However, I'm not suggesting that you cut or boost, but pay close attention to 4K in your vocal. Now for 6K, this is kind of what I would consider like the clarity of a vocal. Does it sound clean and more intelligible? This is less the harsh piercing frequency like 4K was. However, if you want a more clear vocal, boosting some 6K can sometimes do that. And if a vocal is too harsh or too tinny or lacks warmth, sometimes cutting some 6K along with 4K can really go a long ways to thicken a vocal up. 7K to 10K to me is usually where the sibilance of a vocal lies. This frequency range is almost always between 7 and 10K on almost every voice out there. And so when you're taming sibilance, this is usually the frequency range you want to pay the most amount of attention to, but this also starts crossing over into the top end of a vocal. Now, to me personally, in addition to the 7 to 10K, 10 to like 16K is really the top end of a vocal. This is where all of the like sizzle lives and where all of the top end lives. We're not quite into air yet, but we are at the top end of the vocal. And then finally, like around 17K to around 20K is the air of a vocal. Now, boosting like a high shelf at like 20K can really bring out the airy qualities, the breathy qualities in a vocal. And you want to play around with this because, again, all of these frequency points kind of overlap. And so depending on the voice itself, sometimes the airy quality of a vocal can be all the way down in like 14 or 15K. But sometimes if you boost too much 14 or 15K, a voice can sound kind of harsh and too sizzly. So you always want to use your ears. You always want to play around with this. But this is a general guide of what I have found works really well for almost every voice. And these are the frequency ranges that I pay attention to on every voice that I work on. I really hope that this helped you train your ear and know what to look for, and more importantly than that, know how to accomplish the things that you're trying to accomplish. I think one of the most important things in mixing is to have an end result in mind. And
Oh, hell yeah, that was...
Absolutely. That is exactly what I was thinking about.
I love his breakdown across it. Like, come to find out, Glenn is a 100 hertz.
Maybe even 80 hertz. We'll see. We'll test it out. When we do get the Fab filter set up there, we will check it out. And it doesn't have to be that particular one either. Every one of the EQs that we have access to, I mean, we can find stuff to work with that has really good layering like that, a really good segregating of the sections of the EQ to work with.
Yeah, I've been looking at a couple of different EQs, and what I like with the Fab filter is that whole knob approach where you know, you go to your frequencies, and then having the knobs like down there like that helps you to just precisely go up and down without getting lost with the left and rights. Because as he mentioned, the thing that gets in my way with EQ is sometimes I feel like I'm just exploring, and like he said, you know, you don't know what you're going to get. You're just kind of feeling around, and that's not the proper way to do EQ. You really want to focus on your frequency and
what you're trying to accomplish, as you mentioned.
Know what you're trying to do,
Yep. And the other thing that was interesting there was as he's talking, as he's going through it, he's modulating, he's going up and down in that one narrow band. So you are really getting your ear attuned to what happens in that space, at least for his voice while he's talking. And the other thing to notice about that is it's not just picking where on the EQ spectrum, like what actual frequency you want to cut or boost, but also the Q. And the Q is how wide that is. Because if you make it really wide, you get a really big fat mountain, right? Or a fat like volcano shape on the EQ. Whereas if you make it a really narrow Q, you end up with a really thin spike. So like it depends if you're trying to get a very specific frequency, you're trying to do a very tight Q. And if you're trying to do something where it's more of an area boost, like he was talking about that 300 to 500, or in the the 10K, like 6K to 10K, those are larger ranges. So you might want to boost a larger area of that range with a thicker cue.
Yeah,
Good stuff, though. I really like that.
Colt Kappa Room. I just put a link up in the chat for you guys.
Nice.
Check him out. That's some good stuff.
Absolutely. And again, that EQ stuff, a lot of that is ear training over time, getting used to that kind of thing. And I have a graphic that I'll bring up some other time here, because I have it on. I think I have it in my my archives, but I'll find it. It was basically showing a frequency spectrum and talking about on each area of the spectrum, like what reasons would you boost this section and what reasons would you cut this section. So it was like, for example, you have room noise, or there's woof in the room and you're trying to EQ a room. Okay, go to this frequency and you cut, or you're losing one of the singers in the mix, and it's like, okay, well, for that voice you would want to go to this frequency range and boost a little bit to get them to cut through. It's like those specific types of things. Hey, what's up, Slither?
Yeah. When it comes to EQing, if you start losing layers, like you don't hear an instrument that you know is supposed to be there, that's when you know you're not EQing properly, because you're cutting off some of the instrument layers.
Yeah, and that's a lot of time you would do the EQing on a per track basis, like you're EQing what you're trying to do there, and trying to get it set for that particular track, so that when you're soloing that track, it sounds like it should. The guitar sounds like a guitar. It has the right presence. It has the right character. The piano sounds like a piano. The voice sounds like the voice should. And again, it depends if you put me all of a sudden on a vocal track, like we were talking about. If we put me on a vocal track and it was EQ'd for a female vocalist, a high female vocalist, it would sound completely wrong, because my forman's in the different place, and like most of the sound that you would want to be boosting for me is not even being touched by what you would have set up for a high female voice, where you'd probably have like the whole low end of my voice completely shelved out, like completely out.
You're not a 200 to 300 guy kind of guy.
Well, the thing is, that comes back to what we watched the other time, where there's the overtones, right? So like, even if I were, say, an 80 hertz guy, that would also mean 80 hertz and 160 and 240, and like each of those other overtones, the strongest would be the lowest two of that. That's what generates your formant for your voice there. You're getting those lowest two frequencies that you see boosted on that EQ graph. Mine would just be shifted a little bit left of most people's. So I could take whatever they have as like, if I bring up one of the presets for male vocal preset in the Personas board, for example, I'll just take what they have there, and I'll take the lowest, not like where they have the bottom dropped out. I'll just move that point a little bit further left, like another 20 hertz down, so that I'm not cutting my voice as much, but I'm leaving myself a little more room on the low end before I cut out the bottom to take out room rumble or whatever would be coming in the, once you get down to 20, 30 hertz, there's nothing down there that you can actually hear. It would just be rumble that could be harmful. That's why they'll usually cut all that out.
Yeah, and again, this is advice that applies in a lot of different areas. Where it's most useful for me right now is utilizing, the AI voice and trying to make it sound better.
Yep.
Those tips are going to help me with that vocal
Absolutely.
AI. And,
Not only that, but
Premiere editing, when it comes to like cleaning up, a podcast, that stuff's invaluable.
Absolutely. You'll definitely have a lot more control over the end result voice, and you can make it sound even like a completely different person just using the EQ if you're going for that. A lot of times it's like, like with anything else, you can add too many effects, you can add, you go too far with what you're doing, like you're trying to EQ something. But if you're just trying to fix something specific, okay, I need to get more presence in this voice, or I need to cut some of that background noise or whatever. There's numerous things that you can do to try to fix vocal track like that.
Well, and that's why, like you mentioned, I like to EQ on an individual track. EQing on a mix can get really squirrely.
Yep, because now you got interactions between each channel's EQ and the overall mix EQ.
Yeah.
But sometimes there is something, again, like if it's a room thing where, there's too much boom and you're getting something that it's overpowering something else, or you can't get enough volume because it's doing too much of that. You can try to figure out, okay, what things are actually, working into that range. Like, okay, if it's a low thing, then okay, you got the kick drum and you got the bass. Maybe the keys if they're getting down that low, but your guitar is really never going to get down there. Your vocalists aren't going to get down there, so already what's going to be expected in that low end, under 100, let's say, or under 80 or 50 or whatever. Even my bass with the low B, that low B is about 30 to 31 hertz. So once you get below that, you're already below. My low B you can already almost not hear. Like when I hit that, like if I'm hitting the low B and I'm supposed to be hitting a C, you might not even notice, because it is such a rumble rather than a sound, and it's so far below the other sounds that it almost You know, I can almost get away with a wrong note down there because it is such more of a feeling than it is a sound. But at the same time, you want to hit the right notes all the time. That's important too.
Yo, Slither Joe, my brother from the sewer. Good
Yep.
to see you.
Bringing out the happy birthday. Nice. The happy metal birthday.
He's got one coming up too. He's
Ah.
a February baby.
It's going to be right back at him coming up soon.
Yeah, all the cool dudes are born in February.
That's right. But not me. Some of the cool dudes are born other times as well.
Well, the Giants. You're a cool giant dude.
I was late. Didn't quite make February. I made it by April. Rolo, the 5th. Nice. Happy belated, man.
Oh, you were on the 6th?
5th.
Happy. Oh, 5th. Damn, my
I think that
eyes
says 5th.
really- my eyes
I had to
really
check
are
it too,
going. I guess I am old. I can't see shit.
And yes, every time you add an instrument, the EQ is that much more important. Yep. And a lot of times, you know, you can get away with, like I said, you know, if you're doing it on each channel and each thing is represented the way it should be, then it comes down to the mix, where, you know, everything should be handleable in the mix. But when you get something then that's going wrong, then the EQ is a huge thing for sure. The thing that blows my mind is when my buddy Mike is mixing, he's not only mixing the main mix, but like the other day he had 7 different monitor mixes. So there are 7 other speakers on stage that he has 7 individual mixes going to so that people can hear, you know, the vocals, or the drummer says he wants to hear a little bit of the bass, or he wants to hear a little bit of the fiddle from over there. And, you know, the keyboard player, he wants to hear some of the other, you know, the other guy on the other side. So like everybody has their own choices of what they want in their monitor mix, which is not a big deal. Like that's part of the reason that we set them up like that, so that they can hear what they need to have everybody represented. A lot of times they can hear the musicians that are right near them, the ones where they're near the amp, or if you're right near the drummer or whatever, you're hearing enough of that, so you don't need any in your mix. But you need enough of everything else coming through your monitor to overpower or cut through what else is going on there.
Yeah, or in the case of the drums, you feel them.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Blasting right through you. And that's where a lot of times, like if the drummer's playing too hard, it can make it really difficult for people, because then they want their monitors to be even louder because they need it to be louder to get cut through the drums. But if it's that loud, then it might start coming and feeding back into their microphones. Because we also had six vocalists that night, so six instruments, 5 vocalists. So it's, you know, it's one of those things where it can be a very you know, that equation does get quite complicated quite quickly when you have, you know, that many people on stage and that many mixes going on, that many microphones that are live. But, you know, the fact that it all manages to handle it, a lot of it is EQing on the individual channels. A lot of it is watching to make sure that nothing is going crazy and knowing what to jump to first if something does start going crazy, whether it's bring down the main a little bit or whether it's jump to monitor mix 1 because that was the one that was a little hot or whatever.
Yeah,
Got to figure all that out.
Like you said, you know, monitoring in itself is an art. That's another topic. Like,
Yeah.
we could do a whole night dedicated to monitoring properly, because
Oh, yeah.
it's tricky. Like, whether you're talking in a studio or you're talking this kind of broadcasting, monitoring is the thing that I think we all fuck up on once in a
Yeah.
while.
And it's one of the things that can make the big difference. Like when something does start going wrong, a lot of times, you know, if you don't know it, I mean, there are people who, you know, they don't even realize that they've been muted for half an hour or that their camera's been off.
Or you're
you know,
not getting a true reference of what's getting recorded. You know, I'm constantly telling people to do a test recording and not just trust what they're hearing, especially with, you know, this stuff, because it's what gets recorded that matters in the end. And half the time it doesn't match what you're hearing.
And that's the thing is, like, for me, when we're talking right now, like, you sound fine, like your level sounds good. And when I hear myself, I'm hearing myself at about the same level. But I bet if we were to go back and listen to the recording, we would find that maybe I'm louder than you are by a significant percentage. Because people do say that your mic is kind of quiet, but it's not always kind of quiet. And the question
I just brought it up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, like, if we were to listen to this, like, as a reference recording and see how it was before and how it changed to here, and that, you know, because it seems like it's just about, you know, even essentially at this point.
Uni gave me the tip.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, it's good to know, you know, and sometimes you got to kind of tweak as you go, and those little things help us.
Absolutely. And some good tips on all that stuff. And now going back to the cage thing, I was just, you know, I always have that in mind, just because to me that is such a big thing, is figuring out those cage shapes and figuring out how they relate to the chord shapes and how they relate to the scale shapes. All of that stuff is really big. The graphic that I was looking at, or that I brought up last week, was it last week? Might have been 2 weeks ago. one of the graphics that I brought up that has like the pentatonic scale and the minor scale and how they relate, between the caged shapes, the movable caged shapes, the pentatonic shapes, and the diatonic shapes. It's a lot of information. You don't want to just pick it up and be like, oh, I got to memorize all this. But it's more, I just have it in front of me and let my mind kind of wander while I'm looking at it and just kind of absorb over time. And I have the guitar in hand and just figure some things out.
Those little cheat sheets and charts that you have, sometimes they can be real handy just as a visualizer.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just the circle of fifths. I mean, having that up and just, if you're uninspired in practice time, like it's time you want to play, you want to practice, you got the guitar in your hands, but you don't know what you want to play all of a sudden. Instead of just putting it down and walking away and, not practicing, just start hitting some notes or throw the circle of fifths up and go, what key do I not often play in? And, jump to that part of the circle of fifths and say, okay, these are the 6 chords that I'm using because they're all right there. And, you can, from that little batch of 6 chords, you can get everything squared away.
And that's how I'm trying to like expand my horizons. What key do I normally not play in? And I'm trying to go there. It's good to force yourself out of the box.
Johnny Crawford from New Zealand. Coming in from Facebook as well. How's things?
Man, we're getting the whole world on Facebook, huh?
Oh, yeah. Traveling everywhere. Definitely good stuff. And again, it really just comes down to the repetition, the iteration, the exploration is big. Not being afraid to just going in and trying stuff is huge. You can hit wrong notes, you're allowed. If you have a lot of people around, you don't want to play wrong notes and have you're playing and have them like hold their ears and run away and stuff like that. Yeah, I get it. Everybody wants to have it sound good, but at the same time, don't be afraid when you're in practice to allow yourself some room to explore, and you don't always have to be right. That's one of the big things, and that's where you'll find some of those big breakthroughs, where all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's how they made that riff. That's how they made that sound. Just comes to you all of a sudden.
Yeah, and whether you're practicing with others or you're just practicing by yourself, I mean, we tend to be more self-conscious about what we're playing when we're playing around other people. Makes it a little harder to experiment sometimes.
Exactly. And that was the point, is like, when you're by yourself, you go nuts. It's just you. And, you can, be unafraid. And a lot of times I'll start out just by doing a lot of slides. And, I'm not hitting specific notes. I'm just, and just making noise on the instrument. And then, I'll land on a note, boom, and then go from there. And it's like, you hit that note and go, oh, that sounds like this other song. And you go from there. And like Uni was saying right here, he's been recording guitar direct and then reamping with the plugins, and it is an awesome idea. I mean, that's, again, the recording clean is like the best advice anybody could have, is just, get it as clean as you can in the recording and then add effects after the fact and add them judiciously. That's the other thing, is it's very easy to go overboard on effects, whether you're trying for a certain sound or whether it's just, I got this plugin and that plugin and this one and that one and that one, and like they all do something great, and many of them are free and they're all available and you can just get them and use them, and they all have a place. Getting familiar with them all is important, but you don't want to throw 50 different effects on every single track. It's like you want to have the cleanest sound you can and then nudge it in directions of, each of those plugins judiciously. If you're trying to get a little bit of a wah or a little bit of a chorus effect or a little bit of a flange or whatever, you don't have to go like, wah.
And a lot of times it just like you explore with notes, you should explore with your effects, see what they do, the effect that they add, how much wetness you want in that effect.
Yeah.
Once you get to know those effects, treat them like makeup. It's just like putting makeup on somebody.
Yep.
You don't want to just slap a ton of makeup on someone. That doesn't look good. But
Judiciously,
you do it right, and it complements, it accentuates. That's how effects should be in audio engineering.
Exactly. And there are certain styles of music where you don't need any effects at all. You're just trying to get just that clean sound and just trying to get the best mix you can between the clean instrument here and a clean instrument there. Even if it's room sound, you're trying to get the most natural sound you're trying to get.
Yeah, if you're solid enough with what you've recorded, that you can say, this doesn't need effects. Like, if you're going to add effects, just like with the EQing, you want to know what you're trying to do before you start messing with those frequencies. Before you start adding effects to something, what are you trying to accomplish with those effects?
Exactly.
That flange, that reverb, chorus, like the standard effects we tend to use, they serve a purpose.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I did, like Uni's saying here, he creates basic chains as presets for good starting points, which is perfect.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
one of the ones that I used for that, I actually made two, and I don't use them that often, but the one is just the BL1176 compressor, and it's because it's got also a gain on the output side, so you can just, I can basically turn that on, and even if I'm playing a bass part that's got super quiet parts in the background, and then some parts where I'm slapping and getting like really loud and aggressive up front, the compressor does a good job of normalizing that for me. So if I'm just trying to listen back and make sure everything's represented, I can just kick that in, and that's just one, it's only one effect on there, so it's not heavy for processing, and it's just, using that output knob, I can determine, I need to go down 3 decibels, fine. I can bring it down a little bit rather than having to change the volume of the track. I can just fine tune it a little bit with that compressor. And again, it gives me a good reference, I can listen back and hear everything very clearly, and then I can go back and just take it off and have just the clean track and leave that, if that's what I wanted, because there are times that I do want a lot of dynamics where I want very quiet parts and I want very loud parts, and a compressor can kind of rob you of some of that, where it's trying to bring those quiet parts too loud.
Yeah,
you want a pianissimo part to stay quiet.
When you do start playing with compression, which you have to, I mean, it's impossible to avoid compressors. Modern sound engineering, it's all about compression and where you use it.
Yep.
But recognize when your dynamics, like where you're putting your compression, can kill a guitar part. It can fuck up a singer who is rising and falling if you use the wrong compressions. You said you were using the BL, what is it, the
1176?
1176?
Yeah.
Is that your preferred one on BandLab?
It's just one. It's one of the built-in ones, and what I liked about it is that it has that. I believe it might even be two gain knobs, or 2 knobs where you've got an input level and then an output level.
Yeah,
very straightforward as far as what you're trying to do.
Top and the bottom.
Freezing the track.
And they have like 3 different compressors depending on what you're trying to do over on BandLab. Get to know them.
Yeah. And when to use each one, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so there's asking about freezing the track to get the take it easy on the CPU. I haven't actually been doing that mostly, but again, I usually stay very, very light with effects.
That's actually important, depending on, if you're using a DAW and on your computer and your tracks are starting to build up, freezing a track is useful, because if you start, if you are running reverbs and heavy effects, VSTs on that track, freezing it renders it. So it doesn't have to run those plugins every time you're playing as you're adding new parts. It renders the track, lightens the load, and lets you continue adding more tracks. If you find yourself like choking your computer, you have to start.
A lot of people do.
Tracks.
A lot of people do, especially if if you're only dealing with a couple tracks and not a lot of effects, it's not as big of a deal. But as you start, like you're saying, as you start building it up, or if you get these projects like Tony has with 70 tracks and lots of stuff going on, you're going to be getting into those.
The only reason why I can get 50 plus tracks out of my Cakewalk is because I do bus mixing. If I wasn't doing bus mixing, when I first started with Cakewalk, I was putting reverbs on every freaking channel, and the effects I was using, I was applying to each track. 50 tracks running a reverb effect will choke even the best computer.
But taking 50 inputs into one reverb, not as big a deal.
One bus running one reverb and 50 tracks routing through it.
And again, this one's only pushing. This one's pushing 50% signal. This one's pushing 30%. This one's pushing 10%. So you can have 0%. You can push as little or as much as you want, but you've got that one reverb configured for what it is. Usually a room, to make it sound like you all got a room and played.
And that was the primary reason. Like it wasn't to save my CPU that I started doing that. It was to consolidate the effect.
Put everyone in the room. Yeah.
And to get that kind of control where. Sometimes the guitar is going to go at 50 to 75%, and the drums are going to be somewhere between 65 to 80% signal.
Yep. And sometimes you might want to put an extra, like sometimes some people put an extra reverb just for the snare crack, for example.
Yeah.
Like they'll have a separate reverb just on that one channel. It might put some to the regular reverb to tie it into the room, but they also want that one special reverb for the.
Usually, I always have my first reverb is the room reverb. Whether I want it to be a hall or whatever. If I ever add additional reverbs, it's usually for brass or cello or certain orchestral sounds. I'll use a different type of reverb to emphasize brass hits.
And I would almost want them to sound like they're in like a little hall or something, like, you know, a little more echoey space possibly, so that you have more presence to the sound.
Yeah, and with vocals, you know, sometimes
yep.
you put the vocals into like a nice chamber.
Yep. And that's where, again, using the bus mixing and sending them down through the buses is the way to go. Hey, Capone, what's up? We're just chilling. You're taking notes. That's good. Taking notes is good. Lots of stuff to talk about, lots of stuff that we've gone through and checked out, and other stuff that we're just learning about now. I mean, I'm a lifetime learner. Like, every day I'm learning something new, and I know I'm never going to know it all. I know that I always have more to learn, and the more I do learn, the more stuff I realize I don't know, and that I should know.
we're all learning together.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why when somebody has a good nugget, or if we're talking about something that reminds somebody about, oh yeah, and that's why I do blah, blah, blah this way. Like, yeah, absolutely. Let us know, because that's the kind of stuff where the things that make us realize why we want to make these changes, like you said, have a target in mind. Like, the reason we're going to take the EQ and start messing with it isn't just because, I mean, sometimes it's just because we want to mess with the EQ and see what it does.
With it. Yeah,
but if you're working on a project,
familiar with the toy.
Yeah, but if you're working on a project and you're trying to get a specific sound, then you have a target in mind. You're trying to craft a certain sound around that voice and trying to make it what it should be.
Yeah, that's why I say anybody who wants to learn a piece of software or an audio tool, when you have a project, when you have something to actually use it, is when you actually learn it.
Oh yeah. And that's one of the biggest ones that I had as a reason to work on a lot of covers. And I mean, we've all worked on covers over the years, and that's one of the things that when you're learning the tools, you know how the song goes, you know how the parts go. Like, there's a Grateful Dead song where I know, 9 of the parts that are supposed to be in there, and I can just sit there and make them all myself. I played along to the record with each of the instruments in hand and just made all the parts, because you can do that. And once you build that, now you've got a whole song that's all just you, but it's a song, it is a cover. But you now learned how to do guitar tracking and bass tracking and drums and everything else. And you build that skill set by actually doing. And if you were to sit there and try to write a song to do that original, it's a great idea also. If you had a song in mind, that's perfect. But a lot of people, they'll just sit down, okay, blank sheet, okay, the key of G, no, the key of D, and then just get
stuck. You have a bigger
stuck.
challenge if you're trying to write a song and learn this stuff at the same time.
Yes.
You have 2 challenges going on. You're trying to you're writing a song, and you're also trying to learn audio engineering, and that better to separate those 2 things. All the remasters that I was doing was to learn Cakewalk, was to learn audio engineering, to learn the sounds on my keyboard, to learn the parts of a song. All of that was for learning. And when I'm actually in songwriting mode, I don't want to learn. I want to write.
Yeah. And sometimes even just a little notepad and a pen and an acoustic guitar, and you're off, sitting under a tree somewhere, or sitting at a piano or whatever. Like, different people have different processes for their writing.
It speeds up the writing process at that point. When everything that I needed to know, I learned ahead of time. Going into the writing process, now it's wide open.
Exactly. And again, it has to do with the creativity, like whether you're trying to write or whether you're trying to do covers. I mean, I'm always looking to have the originals as the end goal. Like, I want to get all the originals out there, and I want to make the best originals that I can. Have original ideas, I'll put them out as well. It's just little nuggets and things like that we can all work together with. But at the same time, it's important to work with the covers to me, because I learn how to do different styles of music, like how in a reggae track is a whole different feel and a whole different way of mixing than you would do in a jazz track or a fusion track or a funk track or whatever. Like, anything that you're doing could be very different. So be open to a lot of different styles as well.
Yeah, and reinterpreting a cover.
Oh yeah.
That is always where, like, when an artist takes a song and turns it into a whole new style, a whole new approach, that is always recognized for its creativity.
Some of the ones that I like are Amy Winehouse songs done as reggae, for example. There's a few of those, a few albums that I've seen like that.
Works good in reggae.
It works real nice, yeah, and it's a lot of fun too. I mean, it's one of those things that once you start getting into these little bass lines, even boom, doom, like just doing things like that, and it's really a lot of fun once you just like hop on board and start doing that. And again, with bass and with guitar, if that's the phrase, and you want to play that phrase, in the next key higher, you just move up 2 frets and just do the same phrase you just did. So and then you go down a string, and now you're playing the 5 chord. So it's like, once you learn those relationships between this string and that string, this note and that note, this fret and that fret, getting comfortable with where the songs go. Like there's only those, like we said, we usually only use those six, those 6 chords, the 1 through the 6. So you could be going from the 1 to the 5 to the 2 to the 6, or the 1, the 6, the 4, the 5, or the 1, the 3, the 4, the 5, whatever you're doing, they're all right in there. So once you find that root note, you can just go from there.
See, Capone, that's what I was wondering too. What is the best compressor for vocals? Not being a singer and not mixing over on BandLab, I can't tell you which compressor is the best, but I would love to hear you guys out there who are mixing in BandLab. Which compressor do you go to for your vocals?
Honestly, for the vocals, I think what we just watched actually on the EQ was even more important because, again, compressor, we can do compressor on vocals, but you can do so much of it with that, with EQing. Like you can do so much of what you would want to do with the compression with the EQ, and then there's also the issue of reducing noise, where we were using the which one was it?
I would agree with Glenn right there. I would focus more on EQ on a vocal track before utilizing compression. Compression is really about controlling the floor and the ceiling of the track. Whether vocals need a compressor, that's the kind of thing you kind of have to listen to the track and say, do I need to stabilize this? Is the vocal track wild? Does it have parts that are really going above the ceiling? Because that's where the compressor helps to bring everything more towards the middle.
Now you can also do upwards compression, where you're trying to take a track that is too low and boost it all using compression as well. But
yeah, depending on the compressor you use, it might bring up some of the quieter parts. But if you've got a noisy mic, you're not going to like the results there.
Yes.
You're
Same thing with
bring up
release.
the noise too.
Same thing with release, Uni, is not only the attack, but the attack and the release have a lot to do with how your sound is coming through. Because if you do have noise in the background and the compressor is like, and then you start singing, it cuts out, and then if it doesn't release fast enough, you'll hear it whoosh back in. So there are issues, and a lot of people, they will just chop the silent parts between vocal parts so that they don't have to worry about any of that anyway. But I was trying to think, Tony, which was the one that we were using for the
Joe's
subtractive
making
EQ?
A good point there about the distance to the mic. Is like a natural form of compression for some singers.
And me, I'm actually farther away than usual here.
Yeah, the better you know your mic, the easier it'll be for you to get the kind of recording you want for each track.
And if I'm, whether I'm talking like this is more just, interview style. But if I were singing, I would probably be like all in this mic, trying to do my vocal parts. So I would be like way in there.
Glenn would be all in there.
But I would also be singing a lot louder, so I would also have the signal turned down some, and there's different ways I would do it. But again, this is just to catch my voice in the room while I'm talking at this point, without having to eat the mic the whole time. But it all depends on the mic that you have. It depends what you're trying to do. Tech Lab is a good one. Yep.
And also with vocal tracks, if you are going to utilize compression, where in the chain? Compression at the beginning or compression at the end is the question. Sometimes you might actually have to use both. Yeah, and you could use different ones even. Depends on the recording. If you're using one compressor to boost things and you're using another compressor to stabilize the signal chain, because now you're running this voice through reverb or other effects, and at the end you might need a different type of compressor to level things off. Yep. And again, could be compressor, could be EQ. There's a number of different ways to accomplish the same kinds of goals, but it's good to be familiar with the different ways, because it's easy to fall into, I just put that, you get it like the hot sauce. I put that crap on everything. It's like you get that one compressor that you're just going to do, and like every time you put that compressor on, sometimes it might not be what you want. Like that might characterize your sound at that point. Yeah, that's not one of those things that you can say like, this is a global rule. I use this compressor every time on all my vocal tracks. If you're doing that, you're not really doing good sound engineering, because each vocal track, you got to listen to it, see what it needs. You really can't come up with a end-all universal compressor approach. Yep. But knowing what I know about my bass sound and what I want to hear after I put a part down, knowing that that's like my preview. So it's like as soon as I get done putting the bass part down, I can just kick in that one effect, and it's already set up just the way I want it. I know how much volume it usually needs to come off, so it's already set just the way I'd like it to be. I can just throw that on, listen to it back, and now again I'm just using it for my own previewing. I'm not even leaving it on the track. When I give parts to people, what they get is a bass part, and there's no effects on it.
There's no effects before I put it in, and there's no effects after I put it in. I usually just record the 5-string through the Mackie board, which has the good preamps, into the line in on my computer, and that's it. Like, and if they want to add effects, they can do whatever they want with it. But usually they listen to it and they're like, wow, and they like the way it is as it is. And if I put stuff on it, I'm just taking away from what the natural sound is. But that's why it's their discretion.
It should accent. If you're putting more stuff on it, it should accent, it should complement, it should smooth out, it should serve a purpose.
Yep. And going through, if you do have a bunch of things in your default chain, every once in a while a song is playing and you're listening to it, turn some of those effects on and off individually. Like turn that one off and see how much of a difference that, maybe you had an echo on there, but you only were pushing, 2% of the track as wet. So like all of a sudden there's almost nothing happening with that. And if you turn it off, you're not noticing a difference. You're just using the overhead for no reason at that point.
And truth be told, if you can't hear a difference, why are you using that effect?
Yep.
All it's doing is literally adding mystery and noise. If you can't hear the difference, you're better off not even turning it on.
Yep. And 4 EQs in a compressor, that's nice. I mean, sometimes you can do it where you have, if you had one EQ that had like so many bands that you could put into one, you could do a lot of that with one, but you're trying to do different things undoubtedly with the different EQs.
And Uni, one thing that's useful is the multi-band compressors. Over on the Cakewalk side, there's Sonidus multi-band compressor is a real useful one once in a while, because it's a combination. It's a compressor and an EQ, and you kind of solve both things with one effect. But you have all the options of an EQ and most of the options of a compressor, and it works in unison.
Now, was that in BandLab or are you talking in Cakewalk?
The multi-band compressors you're going to find in every DAW.
Uni saying there's only one sweepable EQ there?
Well, it depends on the preset. With the multi-band, the Sonidus one that's in Cakewalk, depending on the preset you choose, it'll give you anywhere from 3 to 5 to 8, like the EQ approach based on the preset, the compression approach based on the preset.
And what he's saying, basically, it sounds like he just, was using the individual EQs and came up with a profile where mixing these 4 EQs together and this other part, the compressor, makes the chain that he likes for that. Which is fine. Again, having a chain that you like for what it's doing for your voice and having something that's a go-to is fine, especially when it comes to vocals, because your voice is going to be your voice each time that you're singing. Whereas with guitar or keyboards, you might be doing, whether it's a piano sound or an organ sound or a brass sound, you're going to have all kinds of different things going on with a keyboard and different kinds of EQ profiles that you might want, depending on different parts for different songs. A vocal, usually if you're just singing the same kind of style of things, you would want whatever it is there.
Oh, I
agree. Want to have it how it is.
BandLab is a great sketchbook.
Yeah, absolutely. Get a quick idea down, get it in there, be able to share it with friends really quickly. They can listen to it on their end. They can put in their parts. Go back and forth.
Yeah, write a song in the park.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good stuff. Now, I don't use the mobile personally. Like, I pretty much do everything on the computer at home, but that's just because I'm usually at home doing it on the computer, and if I'm out, I'm usually at if I'm at a rehearsal or I'm at a gig or whatever, I'm doing things over there, and I don't have the access there. I'll just take video from there and using my phone, and then bring it back and do whatever with it later. I could pull audio from that and be able to put stuff, take the audio from live shows and work with that as well. But at this point, I'm just more collecting it all as video and keeping it for archive's sake and being able to share it with the bands so that when I can just send them one link, and here's the link to your band's essentially homepage on my archives, where any show that I've done for that band is all the videos or audio that I have recorded is all in there for them, so they can use it for their websites.
I like your attitude of like record everything. I wish that we had digital recording back in the 90s. I tried to record everything, but on tape. Tapes get destroyed.
Yep. Some people were going reel to reel back then.
Buy more tape.
Oh yeah. We're definitely agreeing.
Hey,
we're agreeing to do it like Uni does.
I had 8-track Fostec reel-to-reels. Those tapes were $30 per hour.
Yeah.
It's like
not
going
wasting
into
time.
a studio.
Yeah, exactly. Has its own cost built in with the time. Whereas now, I mean, how cheap hard drives are now. I mean, and the fact that you can do online storage. You could just do stuff all the time.
for the cost of 3 of those Fostec tapes, I can get like an 8 terabyte drive that can hold like every recording I've ever done.
Yep, exactly. And that's the thing is my archives, I think at this point were just around maybe 3 terabytes around there, but that's 9, 10, 11, maybe. Actually, no, probably even more like 15 years of recordings. But the first couple of years were probably just, scattered a little bit here, a little bit there. Started picking up probably 2014.
Well, and
then
you
lots
also
more from there.
archive at high quality. I mean,
Yeah.
You're not crunching these down into MPEGs that are
No.
or MP3s that are super tiny. You're keeping the integrity of the file.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For some of them, I did put them down to MP3, but not most of them. Like some of them, I would do that just to be able to do something with. Like, just wanted to send it to somebody in an email. Like somebody was like, "Oh, I don't have BandLab, and I want an email or whatever." That kind of a thing. I'll crunch it down, but I will feel dirty doing it. Yeah.
Oh, I would make fun of you if you did that to your archives.
Yeah. Yep. And that's the thing having them as high quality waves is good.
You were cool, man.
Well, you've also got the originally what I would have is the original wave file, and again the Zoom, the way it would record, it would take 2 hours and 4 minutes for each file would be the 2 gig limit. So and it would continue recording after that. So you could record 8 hours straight, and it would just have file 1, file 2, file 3, and it would just be starting into or just be finishing file 4 or whatever.
That's still better than having to change a tape.
Yes.
While you're recording,
and having it lose what it's doing because you didn't hit stop before the end. Yeah, there's all kinds of technology issues that used to happen with that shit in the past that were no good.
Switching tapes, especially when you're in the middle of a killer jam.
The only thing that's close to that, like for me right now, is when I'm using my phone to video things. If it's a really long gig, or if I didn't have a chance to upload and delete the things out of the phone, I can only store so much in the internal and so much in the SD card. But I have it set to the SD card for starters. So I've got like 50 gigs that I can throw at the SD card in one shot. And then it'll start showing me like a countdown on the phone showing like you can record for this much longer with the space you have left. So I'll just, stop before I get to 0, and then I can switch to the internal storage, and I've got another 30 gigs over there. So, 80 gigs total. Like there's a lot of space. We could do a lot of stuff.
And it's always good to be ready.
Yep, always good to be ready. And, I have a mic stand with the little attachment that we made that I basically used the phone attachment that came with this glow light, the ring light. I took that little phone attachment and used that and made a mic clip mount for it so that I can use a regular mic stand and just have it like I can fly that my camera essentially up 8-10 feet in the air so I can shoot over the crowd on the dance floor.
Glenn's like, I can fly.
Yeah, I can already see over all of them because I'm just standing up at 6'6", but then I can send the camera up even higher and like get the view where it's not blocked by anything.
You can get a hat with a tripod on top of it.
Well, the problem with that is that I'm a head bobbing guy, and
you are,
and you do not want a camera on my head unless I'm doing something like skydiving. You need to get the GoPro action with skydiving or some of the what was that one with the jet skis and the hoverboard, like that water hoverboard thing, that kind of thing. Like for that, I would need a GoPro for sure.
If you get one of those stabilizers, and you don't
that could
bob
help
too hard.
That could help. But I would also need the camera though. Like at this point, I have been thinking about it, like a small GoPro or something, just because that would be so useful to be able to just stick that wherever at a gig. It would be easy to forget is the other thing. Like I would have to have a note in my bag, like go grab the GoPro, okay, and like make sure like I know to go get it every time. But that's when you don't want to forget things like that. That would be a bad thing. Inventor of the stick.
Oh, I got the same problem, Uni. I have a box of tapes I can't play because I don't have the original player. I have 4-track cassette tapes that were, proprietary Tascam Porter Studio. You can kind of get the audio from them with a regular tape player, but it's not the same. You don't get the individual tracks. You just get this mess.
Left the tape recorder at a gig once. No good, man. That is not the way to do it. I was thinking about like when they had Grateful Dead shows and they had the whole taping area and how people would all have their little microphones up in the air and all that kind of thing. It's not like that in the bars these days, but like everybody's got a phone, so like everyone's shooting something from somewhere. So like if you were to consolidate all the footage that was out there from a gig that you don't even know about, you could get a really good surround experience out of a gig just from a few people using phones, because you got some guy over there is filming and you got somebody over there filming vertically and somebody over there doing whatever.
Yeah,
somebody's getting up in the face of the guitar player.
What was always cool with the Dead was they encouraged tape recorders and people recording. you can get awesome recordings of old Dead concerts
Oh yeah. And there's
for
actually
free.
a
Just
yeah.
everywhere, and
Yeah.
the band encouraged it, which is why they were special.
And you can get them in your phone. Like in the phone, there's an app that I have that you can just go and cycle through like any of those shows, and you can find soundboard recordings. Oh, this one's 4-star soundboard recording. Boom, hit that one, and there you go, live gig.
Oh, when they would tap into the soundboards.
That's where you get the high quality stuff. Without people going, "Oh man, it's the best show ever!" They're right next to the microphone while you're trying to record. Several years later, oh my goodness,
I did
that's
that
impressive.
I did that with weed once and found it like 15 years later.
And I'm
Still
sure it was
worked.
just as tasty as the day it was put there.
Well, not as tasty, but just as efficient.
It worked. That's important. But yeah, a lot of times there were times in bars where I would like to say like, hey, the best spot to record would be like up there behind the bartenders on this little shelf. And I'd be like, hey, do you mind if I put this up here to record from? And it's like, as soon as I'm putting it there, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to remember that when I'm leaving. It's like, okay, you got to make the mental note. And I got to go over to Mike and be like, Mike, don't let me forget. I put it there. You see it right there? Okay, don't let me forget that right there.
See, and in the job that you have, mic placement, where you put mics for a live performance like that, you got to get used to your mic and its dynamics and be able to look around that stage and say, where is the best place to put this mic?
And a lot of times when it comes to the bars, there's no best place. It's where's the least bad place to put the mic.
Where can I put it?
Yeah, because a lot of times it'll be, okay, I can put it between these two people that are talking really loudly, but there's a spot I could wedge it in there. So it's like the whole recording might just be those two people talking all night with a band somewhere in the background. But for the most part, I do try to find an area that's isolated in a way. And again, by doing it with the camera, I'm trying to do like the whole camera on a mic stand. And if somebody sees a mic stand that's like really tall, you know, like an 8-foot high mic stand, you don't really see the feet on the ground, the legs. So people will kick it. And that's always a problem where they kick it. Now it's not pointing it the same way that I was. I had somebody at a wedding the other day say, I bumped it with my head and it shut off. And I'm just like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, the camera was like wedged in this little bracket and it was set up and filming. You're saying you bumped it with your head and it shut off. Like I can't even shut it off a lot of times when I want to, like to reach the button and hit it. You're telling me you bumped it and it went off. I'm like, I'm not buying that, but whatever. So it was stopped and it wasn't sitting where I had left it. But I found a better spot, like up a ramp, almost in another room looking in. And then from over there, I was a little bit higher and I was able to catch the whole dance floor. So I have like, I'm at a 45-degree angle. I'm catching the band, but I also was able to catch the whole dance floor. So I was able to, get some more crowd involvement in the shot while still getting good sound, audio.
Yeah, and when you're also doing video of them, that location is as much important as the audio quality.
Yeah, and they did have a professional photographer and video guy. Like he was doing both, some video sometime and some just still photography at other times. So they had somebody there at the event doing that stuff. And for me, it was just something that I just kind of throw in. Like, I throw in my lights sometimes. I throw in the videoing sometimes, having a good time there. Everybody's wearing a suit, so a nice fancy event and all that kind of thing. So it wasn't a wedding, but I originally thought that it was a wedding. So I was preparing for it as if it were a wedding. But then it turns out it was a 50th anniversary event for a group that was there. And they were, they had bagpipes and drums, pipe and drum corps in the middle, in set break for the band. So it's kind of neat.
I would love to see a live event with bagpipes.
Oh yeah, I got video I can show you later.
Yeah, get to record it.
for that, actually, the mic stand I was using, that band is so big that we had to use pretty much all the mic stands that we had handy. So for the one I was using for the camera, I was using a mic stand that had a busted clutch. So like I couldn't extend it to the full height. I could only use the middle extension to go as high as I could, and then just attach it to the top of that. So when they did that, like I needed to go higher. So I just basically manually like pushed straight up like an extra couple of feet and just held onto it right there. Like so I was acting as the clutch while they were doing the pipe and drum thing. But that was so I could get up to like 10 feet in the air and shoot over everybody to get a good view of that.
It's only a couple more feet than you're already at.
Yeah, and where I'm holding it is like the clutch was like at face level at that point. So it's like if the mic stand's already extended to there and I'm just holding it here. So I'm just essentially holding it here, stabilizing it while it's shooting from another couple feet up. Works out nicely, but we'll see what the footage looks like later because I started that uploading yesterday. Actually reminds me I got to restart it, but I need to basically be home on Wi-Fi and then start the uploads rather than sending it through mobile data. So I like to do it in a burst.
you'll eat up your mobile data if you try to do it from there.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's not that I try to do it from there, it's if I forget to enable. If I forget to go to the Wi-Fi, then it eats the data, but also the phone heats up a bunch. Like, it gets super hot. So, like, I'll notice, I'll go to pick up the phone and be like, oh, yeah, I forgot the Wi-Fi again. Okay. And then I'll turn it on and let it keep going. But yeah, you got to watch the equipment. You know, you definitely don't want to leave stuff behind. Having a mental note. One of the big things for me was also I used to always have the one microphone of mine that we would always put out for one of the singers. And so my habit at the end of the night was the two things, anything that came out of my stuff rather than the stuff that we always use are the first things that I go home in on. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go get that, put it in my bag, go get that, put it in my bag. Okay. And then I'm done. And now everything is just our stuff and we just do our thing. But anything that's out of the ordinary that came out of my stuff, I have to make a mental note to go get first thing and then do everything else after.
You need an assistant.
I am an assistant.
Yes, but
I'm
you
assisting
need
him. We've actually had them a couple of times. Mike had his boys come out with us a couple of times, and they're in their teens now. So, they weren't doing a lot of sound guy stuff at the time, but they were just kind of seeing what we were doing and getting accustomed to it. But they'll definitely be on board with coming along and helping out with some of that stuff. Like, hey, give me. And we actually had his youngest was helping me hook up the snake the one time when we were hooking. We're at a. It was like right on the water, and it was a Veterans Memorial Park somewhere in north in New York State, sort of on the Hudson side. And it was a nice little park, but nothing really there, no buildings, no stage, no gazebo, just like, boom, like here's the spot and here's where we're going to play. So we just kind of set up over there and did our thing. But we had his youngest was helping me like hook up the monitors. Like, okay, I'll run this over there and plug it into B. Okay, now take this and right along here just like that one and plug it into C and just run them along. Yeah, it was fun. Just doing the whole thing and getting them involved. So it was definitely cool. And I could see them doing more of that, going forward as we get back into busy season again. Like now it's February, like you were saying, wedding season starting to kick up. So now also, we had January was pretty slow. We only had a couple of gigs throughout January. Originally, we thought we had every Saturday booked through January, but there were a couple that got canceled out or miscommunications between bands and the venues and things like that. But nothing was canceled for weather. Where a lot of times January you get blizzards and everything, and people are like, nope, I'm not doing it tonight.
It's about to get warm, and that schedule is going to fill up on the weekends.
Mm-hmm. Free music here with practice at your house. Sometimes it works out the other way, though, where you're making free music donations to other people by having practice at your house. Where one of the guys, Bill, actually, the one who sang Happy Birthday to Tony at the beginning of the show, at Bill's house, one of the stories was about the drums. And Louis is one of the drummer who comes out there all the time. And the one time we go out there, and the first 15 minutes is just Louis yelling about how there's somebody took the drum hardware, blah, blah, blah. They took some of the pieces of the drum hardware and replaced it with like crappier versions of what was there or whatever. And it's like drum hardware? I'm like, who's swapping out drum hardware like at a thing like this? I'm like, whatever, but that's the idea. Is it's not always
cool toys though.
Bill has very nice toys, yes, and it's fun to like. I have pictures of Angie from over there when she was holding my bass, and when we were down there, you see Angie holding that big 5-string bass.
The bass was bigger than Angie.
Yep, it's a big bass. We've done rehearsals down there a few times with that. I told you I went down there with Joey and Cheryl last Sunday, I think it was, and Louis came out also. That was the first time I saw Louis in about a year or so. So we had a nice little jam session over there. He's got the electric drum kit and the acoustic drum kit, and he's got a double layer set of keyboards over there. He's got the whole wall has like guitar amps rocked back and bass amps rocked back. Whole wall of guitars. Now that whole wall of guitars, though, they're all lefty guitars because he's a lefty. If you want to borrow an instrument on the other side, he's got an acoustic, an electric, and a semi-hollow that are righty guitars. There's 3 of them that are over there for those who are righties. But the whole rest of the house is all about the lefty stuff.
The weird guitars.
Yeah. I picked up the lefty bass and played a little bit just to try that. And that's it. You want to feel like a beginner again? Flip your instrument over and try to play something, anything, and you will see it. You feel like a total noob when you try that.
Personally, I feel like I'm a left-handed guitarist. When
you might be.
I air guitar left-handed naturally without thought.
Now, for me, it was with the drumming, where when I would just, like, if I were just sitting here trying to do a drum beat, it was my right foot that would try to keep hitting the hi-hat, and my left foot that used to try to hit the kick. But when I realized that most drum sets are not set up that way, and I realized that hands going this way feels better for me, like doing the hi-hat on the left. So I'm like, okay, hi-hat should definitely be over here. So I just had to retrain myself. Not that I was highly trained in drums or anything, but just retrain my brain to make that kick on the right.
And when it comes to any particular instrument, whether you're left or right, because drums, that's a little weird. Like you got to think, what makes a left-handed or right-handed drummer?
Technically, where the hi-hat is and where if you're using double kicks, though, if you're using double kick pedals,
snare and that relation.
Yeah, like smart. The snare is right in the middle, like right between your knees, essentially. When you're sitting in the chair, the snare is like the most right in front of you, essentially.
So the snare doesn't really matter either way.
Correct.
But
yeah.
But the hi-hat has to be at one side or the other.
Yep, and it isn't going to be like Uni's saying. It's not really a left or right-handed version. It's not a left-handed hi-hat or a right-handed hi-hat. It's you put the hi-hat by your left foot, or you put the hi-hat by your right foot.
It's not like you have to restring the freaking guitar and flip it around.
Right. Now, for kick pedals, though, like if you have a double kick, a lot of times the one kick pedal is right there at the drum, and the other one, there's like a bar going across to where the other one is. So like it might be that the actual pedal's on the right, and the pedal across, with the extension is over on the left. In that case, the kick drum would need to be towards your right side, right? But you might want it the other way. But then again, that's, depends where you put in the hi-hat. Usually you'll have that extension pedal on the side with the hi-hat so that it's not, you don't have the whole kick drum and the hi-hat trying to occupy that side. But it's a preference thing.
I guess how you would arrange the toms. If you've got the toms in the front, like, being left-handed versus right-handed is the difference between doom, 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 doom.
Yeah. But it should feel the same either way, though.
Well, it could feel the same, but you get a different sound as you're playing your parts.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is one of the things I was trying to work on also, is like just something simple like da 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 or something like that, or if you're doing it fast, da 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 da, whatever. Try to make it so that you can do it starting with the right or from the left and having it sound the same both ways, because the timing shouldn't really matter whether you start a phrase with the left or the right. You want them to be the same.
Drummers really are good at going either direction. Especially with tom rolls and things like that. It probably doesn't matter too much to a left or right-handed drummer, as long as those toms are where they expect them.
I would imagine it would be weird if you were used to sitting at a right-handed kit where you've got your hi-hat on the left and your toms, you're used to rolling down to the right. Like you start in front of you above the snare and you go down to the right.
You're on a different kit.
You're going the other way. That would feel very weird, I would think, Yeah, I would think that would feel weird. Not necessarily as weird as flipping a guitar upside down and seeing how that feels backwards, because that you're fretting with the wrong hand, you're picking with the wrong hand, the strings are in the wrong place. I mean, it's just all kinds of messy. The only thing that you get if you were playing a left-handed guitar is the strings would be the right way, where the low one is towards your face and the high one's towards the floor. But other than that, everything is still weird because you're using the wrong hand for this and the wrong hand for that, and it feels like you're doing the rubbing your tummy and patting your head, but you're doing it the wrong way.
Oh wow!
So it's no good.
Phil Collins is a left-handed guitar drummer.
Right-handed kit played left-handed. I'm not sure.
Wouldn't be surprised though. I mean, not only can the dude sing and play drums, but he's left-handed.
Yeah, and that comes down to the grips he's talking there. There's a bunch of different. Albert King playing the guitar upside down. Yeah, love Albert King, man. Such good feeling.
Well, didn't Jimmy also flip it?
Jimmy flipped his, but I believe he also restrung it. So I think he was essentially take a left-handed guitar, flip it over, and flip the nut.
He wasn't playing it with the strings backwards, which I've been seeing. One of the artists that Lou brought me, a kid that I used to go to school with, he plays left-handed with the strings upside down, and it gives a totally different kind of riffing approach.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
He must have really programmed his brain to riff with that.
And a lot of it comes down to the patterns and just trying to flipping that pattern upside down and trying to work on it that way. And actually, we got all the way to 11:10 here. We stretched that hour into a long hour.
Good time for a pee break.
Good time for a break, yeah. Go ahead and bring something up here. We've got a video for you guys. Which one you want to do next?
Yeah, well, we've got that Pink Floyd guitar solo sound video that I do want to check. Here, we'll play our intro, and we'll go into why Pink Floyd guitar solos sound so satisfying.
Stitch Method.
David Gilmour Guitar Lessons by Stitch Method. This is some good shit.
Yes, indeed. Buckle up. Little ambient noise, yeah?
So now you're grabbing some BandLab clips.
Now for me that would also be something where I would use volume automation and bring that from the bottom, bring it in and then bring it back out.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, stretching it actually can be cool.
perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the
I
right
didn't
spot.
even notice 40.
Walking shape with Glenn and Tony.
I didn't even realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.
No matter how you look at it, David Gilmour's soloing can be on the levels of, soulful and pristine and majestic. And there's a lot that goes into it. This quick video is about one tangent of his playing that I noticed, which when I thought about it and adopted it into my playing really changed how I felt when I played the guitar, which I think is something that everybody really wants to experience. And so, nobody can be David Gilmour except for David Gilmour. But we can get real close to getting that feeling from our playing that we get from Gilmour's playing. And so this video here is to show you one little quick tangent that really helped out, and I'll show it to you right now. All right, so we're going to use a Dorian backing track, a really easy backing track. It's going to be G minor to F. I already have it. I'll play it just a couple seconds so you can, feel the groove. Here's the G minor, F, and that's it, back and forth. G minor, F. All right. It has that Pink Floyd kind of backing track already, and what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to solo over this using a G minor pentatonic. Very simple, form 1, box 1 right here. And I'm going to take a solo like I would solo normally, like the Ian Stitch solo. Maybe 4 bars, nothing crazy, but I want you to hear that it's just like a normal solo. It's nothing like David Gilmour. It's an Ian Stitch solo. So let's see how this goes. Oh, that's the wrong button. That was my distortion. Here's my looper. Just sat and played around the G minor pentatonic. Yes, I went down to the first fret here, this little box 5, but you can't control that sometimes. All right, so how do we make this more David Gilmour-esque? Well, it's all about the phrasing, and more importantly, it's all about the imaginary percussion that David Gilmour plays when he's soloing. So what do I mean about the percussion? Well, when I was soloing, picture walking through a series of rooms that have doors, door A, walk through the room, door B, then walk through the room, door C, and so on. When I was soloing, I was kind of opening the door, and my solo was walking through the room, prepping myself to get to door B, which represents those chord changes. It's what I teach on this channel all the time. And then, I would hit a chord tone in chord B, then I'd open the door, and I would solo, and I'd try to be in the now and think of different rhythms and different phrases and let loose and let whatever comes to me play. Now, Gilmour does it differently. Gilmour acts like a battering ram. Believe it or not, you're probably going to be like, what? Because it's not aggressive. But what he does is he opens one door and kind of stops and then speeds up and rams into the next door and blows it open, and then stops for a second and then starts to run, increases the speed, and you'll see what I mean, and then boom, slams into another door. And when we think about this, we can turn it into terms of percussion player, of a percussion player. All right, so pretend that David Gilmour is playing bongos. I'm going to play the backing track, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and visualize and make some sounds to show you what I mean. All right, so he is going to try and make a movement on the drums towards the next chord, something like this, like. Boom. There's the door. Ding ding. Boom. Bop. Doom doom. Pop 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 pop. Boom 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 boom. Pop. Boom boom. Pop 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 boom. Pop. Boom. Okay, so that type of, I hope you can hear what I'm saying here, is I'm trying to create a prefix, a preamble that leads into the chord changes. And so the difference in mindset here, and I will play, trust me, is instead of me trying to hit a chord tone on that very first beat, boom, and then soloing and creating a melody, here we have more of a comforting structure where we have our scale, we know the scale, and now what we need to do is just create rhythms to move towards the next chord tones. And so really quickly, so here we have the G minor pentatonic that we're using. I'm just using the form 1. You can use any single one you like, okay? But really, we want to use what's comfortable for this exercise. And inside are some G minor chord tones, all right? And inside are some F chord tones, right there. And I can use this F here, I can use this F here, and sometimes Gilmour is going to come down to this F down here, which is in the form of 5. So any of those chord tones are game, and I'm going to try to move towards them. So the first thing I'm going to do is do the same thing I said verbally, create a rhythm verbally for you, and then play it 3 or 4 times to show you that it's about the movement towards the moment that gives Gilmour that epic type sound. So if we do this, ba boom boom ba 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 boom. So let's take that rhythm. Ba boom boom ba boom boom ba 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 boom. Let's see if we can do it. Here's another one, all right? I was running toward the door. Now, let me do another one to show you. Let's see. Okay. So these examples here are just really quickly me showing you how to think of it. Now what I'm going to do is take a full solo, and I'm going to try and think preemptively. Am I headed towards my G? Am I headed towards my F? And can I create a series of rhythms that move towards those goals? I'm thinking before the chord change. I'm thinking about running to it. And when I hit it, I kind of pause, hold that note, and then I move forward. So let's see if I can play a couple things. Now, when you hear this back in the replay, it's not going to sound like it. It's just not. It's going to sound like a solo. But I'm thinking about the individual rhythms moving toward the moment. Here we go. Sorry, allergies, my mouth is so dry. And so, we'll do it one more time, just one more time for you, okay? The map hasn't changed. It's a G minor pentatonic, it's G minor chord tones, it's F major chord tones. What has changed is my mental space of rhythm, trying to pretend I'm a percussion player leading into the chord changes. Now, yes, we're just doing here, we don't have like the climax of Gilmour, we don't have the build yet. That stuff will come in other videos. This is about learning how to put that je ne sais quoi, as we say, like that I don't know, into your playing that gives you that Gilmour type movement. Okay, so let's do it one more time. Let's see if we can hear it. See if you can hear that everything I'm playing is before a moment, not after. Let's see. Some fret buzz on this guitar again. I guess the weather. So hopefully you could hear it there. It was much different from the first guitar solo that I took. And so on the Patreon practice sessions, it's about a 10-minute extra bonus video showing you how I kind of practiced for this video. And I'm going to tell you this. This revelation or quick hit came from a dream I had, which was real. I just wanted to, if you made it this long, I'll share the story with you. I was sleeping, had a dream, and I was talking to myself, and I said, hey, self, like, what makes Gilmour's stuff so, majestic? And I was like, oh, he just leads towards the moment instead of playing after the moment. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I woke up the next day, totally forgot about it, and then at 3 in the afternoon, I kind of was like, oh, wait, yeah, that dream. And I tested it out, and I was like, yes, that's exactly what's happening. So, we're on our way to kind of getting closer to the feeling of David Gilmour. I have tons of videos on David Gilmour's soloing styles. They'll be listed below. Some will be popping up here somewhere. And I hope you enjoyed this quick Stitch Method video on prefix, preamble percussion playing to give you that feeling of David Gilmour's majestic guitar approach. All right, rock and roll. Take care. Bye-bye.
And he's got
Awesome.
a team behind him, huh?
Oh yeah, lots of special things going out.
Yeah, that's at Stitch Method Guitar over at YouTube. I threw a link into the chat for you guys.
I think many of you are probably familiar with him already, guitarists out there. If not, you should be, because he's got lots of great stuff and a great approach.
His analysis. I mean, Gilmour, you could literally do multi-episodes.
Oh, and he did, yeah.
Whether you're talking Gilmour as a rhythm player or you're talking Gilmour as a soloist, both are highly influential.
Yep.
I would say he's got to be one of the most influential guitarists of all the guitarists I know. Almost all of them want to capture some of his sound and technique.
Yep. And it's not, it's not blazingly fast. It's not super flashy, but it just has such soul to it, such feeling is what I really get from it.
This was a great one to cover him because the percussive approach he was talking about, as soon as he started mentioning it, I'm like, oh my God, that is, the little muting kind of hits and going back to Bill again.
Yeah.
It's that technique that certain guitarists just have to kind of carry the song along.
Yeah. And just the spacing as well, like the whole pausing after coming through the door, when he was saying leading up to, hitting stuff on leading up to going through the door, changing the chord. And then once you're there, you kind of pause for that moment. That moment of pause, you're not only considering what you're going to be doing next, but you're allowing what you just did to kind of sink in. So you made a phrase and now you're hanging on that last note, or you're letting it just stay silent for a second. And then you're coming in with something else. And by doing those little phrases, it's not hitting a note and hanging on it, and then hitting another note and hanging on it, and just, being, boring, hanging out in one place. You're doing these quick little phrases, but you're doing them strategically and leaving plenty of space. That's the big one.
Yeah. Having space for other things to come in is a big key to a band.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you've just got somebody in there trying to fill all the space.
Yeah. And there have been times where I've worked on projects like that, where in a band lab project, somebody invites you to it, but like the people who were putting parts in already weren't thinking about the future parts that might go in. They were just, filling up the space that was there, which is fine, but then somebody invites you to it and you're looking at it and it's like, there's nowhere for me to do stuff in there. It's like every moment already has lots of stuff happening.
And that's why it's good to always have like an engineer or somebody after everybody lays down the tracks to just kind of clean space up and separate and move sound around.
Yeah. Another thing is that by doing a lot of the mixing, or a lot of getting levels and mixing, getting everything straight, doing it in mono, or I should say having everybody dead center, panned, when you're first getting everything level-wise, can really help to make sure that everything sits nice. And then when you go to fan things out to different positions in the stereo space, even if it's just slightly nudges in this direction or that direction, it'll sound like it's a little off center. It'll give that a little more, three-dimensionality to the space that you're listening to.
And it helps feel like you're actually standing in front of the band.
Yeah, like if you can hear the guitar is a little off to the left, like this guitar is a little off to the left, that other guitar is a little bit further off to the right. There's a keyboard that's a little bit off to the right. There's a bass usually kind of up the middle. Drums are mostly up the middle. But, just getting a feel for where things are. And, there's some plugins you can use to move things in the stereo space, like the Sonata Surround that we were talking about at one point, where you can draw a path for it, and it can literally move around a perceived speaker. So there's a speaker here, and you can have the sound go around that person so that you can hear it moving throughout the stereo space. It can add a lot of something very special or different to what you're doing, but it can also be distracting if it's done too much or in the wrong ways or at the wrong times.
Well, we'll have to do, again, an episode on spatial enhancements.
Yeah.
Stereo versus surround. That'll be fun.
Bring your stereo headphones. Very important.
If you guys want to learn more about how to play in certain styles of certain artists, classic guitarists, Stitch Method over on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. Lots of great stuff. Even if you go to that playlists, the playlist that he has there, I want to say that some of those are going to be like whether it's the Gilmore style or the Jerry, playing in the style of Jerry Garcia, ones like that where they have specifically tailored to certain styles. Probably has them as playlists. Master classes, the Stitch Method, and all that good stuff.
He definitely is a deadhead, huh?
Oh yeah. And there was another one that we were looking at a couple weeks ago. Hey there, Janaya. One that we were looking at a couple weeks ago, who was also a Grateful Dead guy, but for him it was more the backing tracks. Do you remember that one? That was the one that I took the screen grab of, where I got the relation between like Ionian mode and the cage, just the relative chords, and there was basically a little cheat sheet for each of the songs where it's okay. These are the 5 cage positions you would use. This is where they are on the neck. This is where the pentatonics are. This is the diatonics you would use in those positions, and it basically gives you a whole roadmap for the song, and also had his own backing tracks that he did there as well. But yeah, Stitch is a great resource there. Lots of stuff for guitar, lots of great material there. Paul Davids, who we showed earlier, another great guitar resource.
Oh yeah, we'll be looking at more of Stitch's stuff in the future.
Absolutely. It's important. And even just that little groove that he was doing there, that little G minor to F, right? Such a nice little groove. Just a back and forth between a G minor and an F. And you could do that all day, and he was just doing the G minor pentatonic over it. And it's about getting getting everything kind of in there when it needs to be in there, and getting it to where you can really kind of get the whole thing feeling the way it should, getting the notes in the right place. I was even playing A minor there instead of G minor.
And usually when I go to G, I tend to go to G major.
Yeah.
G minor is nice though.
Yeah.
Has a nice softer minor.
What I like about it in particular is that G being one of the chords that has very few sharps. It only has one sharp. So when you go minor, normally you would flat the 7, the 6, and the 3. You're actually unflatting a sharp, and then you only end up with 2 flats. So the G minor only has 2 flats. Yeah. The B flat and the E flat. And that F is nice. Now, what he was also doing with those phrases where he kept ending on the F when the change was coming, so that he would emphasize that the change was coming to the F. Another way you can emphasize that is instead of landing on that F all the time, you can land on that A also, because the A is the 3rd of that F major chord. So if you were hanging out in that G minor, and not the A chord, but just the A single note, for example, because that's the 3rd. So you could do it as an inverted chord if you wanted to, where you're doing the F with A, C, and F like that. Actually, I don't have my ridiculous loaded. That's ridiculous. That was what we were doing with the FAC there. But if I were to do it the other way, the inversion with the F/A, so that's one of your slash chords that we were talking about before.
Yeah.
But by doing it as an F over A, that A is the 3rd of that F chord, right? So when you're emphasizing from here, it's like you're resolving up from the G minor to the F instead of resolving down, right? Because instead of going from that G to the F, you're going from the G to the A, but it's still chord-wise going.
And with G minor, we are in B major.
Relative, a B flat major, yep. Because we're still using just the B flat and the E flat. It does feel kind of weird that there's only the 2 flats, but... And the fact that we're starting on a flat, that's the other thing.
B major's not hard, yeah.
B flat.
Not hard. Oh, wait a minute. G major is B flat?
G
minor is B flat major?
Remember, we're doing G, B flat, D is the chord, right?
Oh,
for the G minor. So
right.
we're doing... But
Son
we're
of
only
a
using...
bitch, I thought I had the scale, and you're telling me I have to do it this way?
We have to do this way, yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's not as easy.
Yeah, but that's the thing is the starting with the index finger on that B flat is key. Like that's one of those things where anytime I have a scale starting on a black note, I'll start with the index finger. So I'll go index, thumb, index, and then I'm on the middle finger on that E flat, and then scoot the thumb back under.
Yeah, that's where the thumb actually, with this scale, the thumb does work nice to bounce.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not fingering it properly coming back.
That's what she said. No. Well, the other thing is that with 2 flats, right? So if we were to start at the key of C, the key that has 1 flat is the key of F, and then when we get to 2 flats, we're at B flat. So it's C has no sharps or flats. F has the 1 flat, which is the B flat. Key of B flat has the 2 flats, which is the B flat and the E flat. And then you go on from there. And that's how you're working around the left side of the circle of fifths at that point. C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, and then B, D, A, E, B. No, B, E, A, D, G, C. The word bead is in there both times, on both sides. On the left side, it's in there flat, and on the right side, it's just in there regular. But if you were to start at the bottom from that G flat on this side, coming back up on the sharp side, is the B, E, A, D, G, C. Getting back to 0 sharps and flats.
So we got beads, we got cages.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We got all sorts of words.
And if you can remember both of those words, you're halfway there. Because knowing is half the battle. It's important.
Well, and what, 4 chords for rock and roll?
Yeah. You can get away with, you can get away with even just 2, honestly. It depends on what you're playing, though, honestly. If you're playing keyboard, if you can figure out how to make a major chord and make a minor chord, that's a great start. Like you're already well on your way to playing everything in rock and roll, because most really don't get into the diminished, or the dominant gets in there sometimes, but not a lot. I mean, you can get away with just using a major instead of a dominant 7 a lot of the time.
Well,
so if you're playing in the key of C.
Whether you start with a major and then go to a minor chord, or whether you start with a minor chord and go to a major chord, big difference.
Oh, yeah.
Minor to major.
Yep.
Major to minor.
Yep, and especially when they're relative major and minor like that, where they're already sharing 2 notes. Like the C major, you've got that C, E, G, and the A minor, you've got A, C, E. So you've got that C and the E in both chords. So it's 2/3 of it is the same chord already. And that's why they sound so good together, and that's why you can, the 1 and the 6 is what those are when they're next to each other like that. And you can use those together all the time. And if you're playing in A minor, and again, I like to always, mentally at least, think of things back to the C major and A minor relationship, because if I'm thinking about something that's in a minor key, I'll just think about playing the white notes from A to A.
Yeah. That is how I program my brain for everything.
Yep. And then if I want to play in major, I just play C to C on. And that way, I can kind of relate things to each other that way. And then, okay, well, the progression is going to be a 1 5 6 4. Okay, well, that's a 1 5 6 4. Or if it's a 1 5 4 6. And that 1 5 6 4, I know you've heard before because there's a billion songs that use that.
Whispering words of wisdom, let it be, let it be. It is also like
major.
3 Journey songs.
Oh, at least. That's all just C major pentatonic I'm doing over that, or A minor pentatonic.
Just a small town girl. I can't sing it and play it, but I know it is that one.
It is that one. It's at least that one. There's a bunch of different ones. And again, it might not even be in C, but just when you hear that relationship, that's again going back to recognizing progressions. You don't have to recognize what the numbers are per se, but if you can hear that the song is coming around like that, and then you start to put together, okay, these 3 are the major chords. If you can home in on 3 of them being major chords, they're almost guaranteed to be arranged as a 1, a 4, and a 5 if you look at them. So like 2 of the major chords are going to be next to each other.
The bass line kind of helps you to figure out the jump. Like,
Does that little bounce around, yep. Kind of like enclosures, like where you're going above it and then landing on it, or below it and coming up to it.
yeah, if it wasn't for the bass line, sometimes I would never figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah, and a lot of times I like to anchor to the bass also because the bass is usually not that it's always doing the least complex stuff, but it is the least likely to be playing it's least likely to be playing a lot of notes at the same time. So you can home in on a note.
It is the part in any arrangement that has always helped me to hone in on what chord am I, what key am I.
Yep. And again, when you start hearing it come around, like if it is a relatively simple.
Oh, you're even fancier. Okay, you're hired.
And that's all it is, just encapsulating. Like when you're thinking about your target, you just have, even just thinking in C major pentatonic, if we were to just take C, D, C, D, E, G, and A, any of those notes at any time, but we're just saying, and we're going to have to get to that F at some point, but like what that A, go up to this, thinking about that C, and then walking it down to the F, and then you can go from the 3 to the 5 to the 1, just bouncing into the notes that are there.
And again, when you're looking at artists' styles and approach, I mean, that same progression, I think it was the keyboardist in that particular case, the way he was playing and the way the bass line went. That was a very common approach and bounce for them.
Yep. Yeah, the combination worked out very well.
It's the kind of technique that they used over and over across multiple albums.
Yep, and with good reason. And again, there's numerous artists that use that same progression, and you can, there's no saying that you can't use a 1 5 6 4 progression in your songs. But one thing that you could do is start from a 1 5 6 4, and then maybe use a substitution, like use a borrowed chord for one of those. So you started with that structure, so you know how it goes around, but then you take one of them and you replace it with something similar, borrowed from a different key.
When you're looking for something spicy.
For something spicy. Because then your ear, all of a sudden, you're like, yeah, I've heard a 1 5. Oh, wait, what was that?
Yeah, I thought I heard this song before.
Yeah, but I haven't heard it do that before. Yeah.
Well, have you ever heard this song on
weed? The back of a 20 on we.
I've heard every song that way.
On we. Like when we were talking before about the creep, right? The 1, 3, 4 minor 4. Like to me, that was one that's I would never have thought of in a million years, going from a 4 to a minor 4. So like if I was doing in the key of C, it would be that C, and then E major is the trick where you're getting that A flat or C to
The
to
3
E
has
major.
to be major?
In this case, yeah, it's an E, C, and then a major 3, and then a major 4, and then the minor 4.
Oh, that's the Jar of
Creep.
Hearts one.
Yeah, exactly.
You go
No,
back to
from
the
from
C
that
at the end?
from that 4, you go to the minor 4. So you bring that to go from that F major to an F minor. That's what really messes you up.
Oh, you're so tricky.
Not me, man. They wrote it, not me.
Hey, Christina Perri used it. She was good.
A lot of people borrowed it, but yeah. Ah.
Yeah, see, that's Jar of Hearts. And
So
it's
that is
so
worth it.
melodic. Like that F shift down to major to minor
Yeah.
just like leaves the listener like, ooh.
It's like the listener
mysterious.
already was surprised by that major 3rd coming in, because that gets you that, A flat in there, and then it comes back to that A flat at the end like you just did there when you go back to that minor, because that's where that note comes from in the first place, which is kind of cool.
You know, to Christina's credit, like the melody that she wrote for her vocal part on top of that is what really makes her song, utilize these chords. It's that melody she puts on top of it that makes these chords stand out.
What would be funny to find out whether it was the melody that dictated the chords, like the melody came first and then they decided to put those chords and they just happened to be the same chords that were already being used there, or if it started from the chords and then the melody was built on top, like you're thinking.
I get the impression she's probably one of those writers who does start with the chords and writes the melody on top of it. But I'd actually like to know, like, if she started with the melody in that particular case and the chords just happen to fit in, for that particular song, it is chord driven, but she writes a great melody on top of it.
Yeah. And again, I mean, that's just one of those that I saw an intro for a video, and I didn't even watch the whole video, but just saw that it was a 1 major 3 major 4 minor 4, and I played it, and I was like, ooh, because coming back to that note, like just again playing it in C, because they're all immediately going from the G to the G sharp or A flat, which already sounds weird, but then from there, and then you bring that A flat back in. Very cool. But that's where that's one of those progressions that would not have occurred to me regularly, because again, I wouldn't have thought of using both the major and minor of any of the chords because it doesn't belong, but it's borrowed from somewhere, and it works.
Where you use that little major to minor shift, that F,
And a pause right there, yeah.
Yeah, using it at the end of the progression like that.
Gives it a melancholy pause.
Back again.
Yeah.
It leaves you hanging in a way that doesn't feel so like you just been hung. It makes you feel like you're just gently gliding back to the scene.
Yeah. One of the other ones that I particularly like, progression-wise, is 2-6-1-5, and it's just because it starts like the 2-6 are both minor, and the 1-5 are essentially both major, doing it that way.
2-6-1.
Yep, I was going from like let's say a D minor to an A minor to a C major to a G major.
To a G major? Oh,
Yep.
You crazy bastard. Oh, this is another song I recognize.
Yep.
starting
stuff.
with the 2,
Mhm.
always an interesting approach.
Yeah, another one that they like to
One-
do with that would be a 2, 3, 4, 5, where you're just
Yeah.
kind of walking up that whole way.
That is one that I have yet to utilize more. Like
Mhm.
I can't think of any song that I've written where the 2 was my starting chord.
Yep. One thing about that with the 2-6-1-5, if we were to use inversions, right? Because the 2-6-1-5, like you're jumping from that 2 up to the 6 usually, right? So you're jumping from a D bass note to an A bass note, so you're jumping pretty far. But if you were to use inversions, so that you're doing the 2 is here, and then if you're going to go to that A, you could just do, you're only dropping that D down to an A. Right?
Well, that's what I was doing originally.
Oh, sorry, to the D and the F go down to the A and the C.
Yeah, that was the inversion I was just using there.
Yeah.
Although if you were to go with first inversion on the D,
Yep. That's the other way to do it. Yep.
the D to the A going down sounds nice too. It has a nice drop.
Mm-hmm. And then where for the C?
Really kinda sad.
Further down for the C, or come back up?
Well, the C, I barely have to do anything. All I got to do is drop my A to a G, and I'm still on C.
Yep. And then for that G, maybe drop that one down so you get that low note. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is more somber.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe an F, maybe a G, maybe an A, because we need a bridge.
And then do a C.
I do see.
I like it.
See, that's when music gets fun.
Mm-hmm. Just throwing stuff out there and see what feels good. And again, what I started doing there was just all minor pentatonic. So D minor, we're playing D minor as a starting chord. So I was just doing using that D minor pentatonic for basically the whole thing.
And if you're trying to get more comfortable with what you're playing, singing it out loud like that, saying it out loud, like doing that D, A. If you can program your brain, now that I'm trying to do it, I'm
Yeah, it's difficult, yeah.
doing that is a good exercise to associate what you're, because a lot of us aren't on the ball when it comes to what we're doing. There's a lot of people I ask, like, what are you playing? And they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It
I was
doesn't
playing
mean
notes,
you
and
can't
I think it was the
jam.
right ones.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to know to jam with other people, but the better you get at it, the better your jamming with other people become. Because if people could tell me what chords they're playing, I can see it with your Meticulous. It makes it so much easier to jam with you.
Yeah, and I will say about the Meticulous that I like the whole playing with white notes particularly. They show up better. Like if I was playing all black notes, like they don't come through as well on the display. I mean, you can probably still see which one I'm hitting, but for me, it's like by having everything related back to C major, A minor makes it that much easier to see what's going on.
Yeah, and my brain is programmed to look at that keyboard.
Yep, and it also the fact that it has the staff up there. Also, I really like the fact that we have the staff notation up there, so you can see what a chord looks like. Like right there, a C sus2. For that, I'm using my thumb to play both the D and the C. Like my thumb is just across the C and the D, and then my index finger is on the G. And that's technically a C sus2 because we're playing the C and the G, or the 1 and the 5, and then we're using the 2 instead of the major third.
For me, that is really good because I'm not a good staff reader, but since you started using Meticulous and we started doing this, my staff reading has improved more in the last 6 months than the last 30 years.
I still have a stuck note. There it is. It was bugging me. I think it was that guy.
Kick it.
Yeah, I think it's because I was holding those 3 and I let go of the other ones at a different time, so it didn't catch the release event.
But it's those damn sus2s.
Yeah, but I like that sound though.
Oh yeah, well, listen to the chord just by itself with a nice piano sound. I mean, that could go, that could be happy, that could be sad.
And the SHHhhh similarly, but in a different way. Yeah.
I mean, a second shouldn't sound so pretty.
It's allowed to. The fact that we're
Barely.
framing it with that, the 1 and the 5 kind of frames it for us, and that's where that 2, 3, and 4 all together, like we're doing that. See,
And I think that's actually a little air supply right there. Another one I did last week.
nice.
Not the song I did last week, but that's one of their songs.
Sure. One of the best things about the bends that we were talking about last week, even if we're doing this in C major, is that you guys got that. And that's where you get the bends on those 3 spots in the pentatonic scale, from the 7 to the root.
Works good with the brassy sound.
Yeah, the trumpet. It's about putting them in the right spots, tastefully. But sometimes that's tricky.
And that was pretty much the same technique both with the G and the C. Just like you picked up on what I was playing. That second chord was just the G with a 4th
Nice.
instead of
Yeah,
a
yeah.
second.
Yep. Very cool.
Now I got a couple of different ideas. I'm gonna have to revisit that one after.
Yeah. Just remember SHHhhs and SHHhs, right? Because that's where we were with that one.
I shall sustain.
You need a pedal for that. It's over there on the right. The
Oh, I'm
old
a
sustain pedal.
I'm a sustain whore.
And that's when getting comfortable with that process, because that's something that I did learn from classical piano when I was young. I did learn how to use all 3 pedals, and I got used to it then. So revisiting the pedal, like I'd never had a pedal over here for keyboard, but now that I have the Salviano that's got got the 2 pedals, so I can use that. And getting back used to hitting and holding a chord, and then getting the sustain on, and then doing something like getting the release points right is
and
tricky.
Being a guitarist and a bassist, you can appreciate the other 2 pedals on a piano, because the middle and the left one are more about the mutes, and the the middle one is really cool because you get a little bit of muting and you get a little bit of sustain just in different areas of the keys.
It should sustain anything that you have held down when you hit it, so that it's you can it feels the same almost as using the right pedal, except that when you hold the right pedal down, like you hit a chord and you hold the right pedal, everything's
right pedal.
open.
Yeah, the right pedal is the one that I'm a whore on. It's like,
exactly.
Everything sounds nice when it rings.
Because everything's wide open, and as long as you're not hitting clashing notes, everything's cool.
But you gotta
with
be
the
careful.
middle pedal,
If you over sustain, I mean, I am constantly doing that. Like, I love it, but it becomes hard to mix because the sustain starts to ring, especially when you run it through EQ.
Yeah.
So you do have to let go of that sustain pedal once in a while.
Yep. And with the middle one, the main thing that happens is whatever you have held down when you hit the middle pedal, only those hammers stay up. So if you hit those notes again, they'll continue to ring out. But if you hit other notes, they'll be muted or just staccato if you wanted to. So you could have like a chord hold and ringing out while you're doing stuff with both other hands that are unrelated. And if you hit one of those same notes, it'll re-engage because those hammers, or the mutes, I should say, are up. Good stuff. But yeah, that's the more physical piano stuff. So most people don't really have access to a physical piano with 3 pedals. So
Yeah, I kind of miss not having those pedals. I am tempted to spend that $150 and get the one for my keyboard.
Yeah, because it's just like a little unit with a wire, right? So it's just down there, and you.
Yeah, it's a a big ass pedal.
Okay.
It's got all three, and it's the sustain pedal cost me $30.
Mhm.
That one would cost me 150. So I feel like it's overpriced.
Yeah, and especially because you already have the sustain pedal, so you already have that feature. So you're essentially the only things you're getting additionally are the mute pedal, which really isn't that useful, especially because a lot of keyboard players would just use a volume pedal instead.
And if I wanted to simulate what those two pedals would do, I could just by programming a button, or I have multiple sustain pedals, so I could always plug one. Fortunately, with this one, it has two pedal inputs, and I can program either one to be whatever.
Right.
The special $150 pedal allows me to use just one, and it actually does all three things from one pedal input.
Nice.
So
Very
I can
cool.
use the second one for the expression, because I do have the expression pedal. Which
I was gonna say, so many people. That's one that Jeff uses all the time.
Use. I paid $60 for my expression pedal, and just never use it. I'm not much of a foot musician.
For me, it's not even to use. Like I wouldn't use it the way I would use a wah with a guitar, for example, where I'm wah wah wah. I'm like using the pedal like that.
More likely use it for that than. Typically with MIDI, you're using those for adjusting either level or MIDI effects.
Yeah, you hit it on it right there about talking about MIDI, because I was thinking more in a, we're either live or we're in a jam session, and the big thing for that expression pedal for a keyboard player is that the patches in a keyboard a lot of times are not the same volume. So like one will sound really quiet, another one will be blazing loud. So with the expression pedal, this avoids you having to reach over with your hand and do a volume adjustment on the actual instrument. You have your foot just kind of hanging out on that expression pedal. So you go to this patch and it's too loud, you can just back it off a little bit, and then let go of the pedal and go back to what you were doing. And then the next time you change the patch, you can give it a little bit more. So that's really the equalizer for the different patches without having to utilize your hands to go to the knobs to get that volume change. That's the benefit that I see from that one.
Yeah, or having to go through every patch and try to get
Equalize.
them all. Because you know what would be super useful if they had a compressor for patches, for guitar presets and keyboard sounds. If there was like a instrument compressor that made sure that no matter what sound I used, it would sound consistent to the signal I'm sending.
Now that is one of the things with the presets that I can load in the Personas board that we use out in Pennsylvania there, with the Studio One, Studio Live, I should say, board, where basically if I tell it it's a guitar track, it sets up the entire channel strip, including the EQ, and if it needs a compressor, if it needs a gate, if it needs a limiter, like anything that would normally be available on the Pro channel is fully configured on all of those. So like if I say it's a male vocal, it does a full thing. Here's a male vocal with the EQ sweep, and with this added, this added, this added. So it is a way of kind of presetting like that. But you can still wind up with patches that vary in volume, and that's where, again, the expression pedal is a good way of kind of balancing it out. But you would have to otherwise go through and manually adjust each of those patches. That's too loud, bring them down some. The ones that are too quiet, bring them up some. Have them all meet in the middle.
Oh, and guitarists are the ones who are going to understand more than anybody else, because if you're using like a guitar effects processor, a Line 6 or something, every one of those presets has its own attitude.
Yep. And I mean, I have the floor pod over here that I was broke it back out again the other day and was messing around with it. So it does have the expression pedal on it as well. I mean, it's kind of a big dog.
Oh, that is a big dog.
It's got that's the expression pedal, or a wah pedal if you want it there. It's got the 4 different presets on the front. You can go through the different banks, all the banks, and you got drive and treble, bass. But the main idea is that on each of the banks, it's got the 4 choices for sounds. And so for each bank, it's not going to be like these 4 are all heavy distorted or these 4 are all clean. It's usually like, okay, here's a clean sound, here's a boosted sound, here's a way out there distorted sound, and then here's something else. Like they'll give you.
They don't tend to organize their libraries in any logical way.
Well, in this way, it is a little bit logical.
Is making the presets for it.
To me, the reason I'm having like a really wide spread on those 4 on each bank is so that you don't have to go cycling through banks to get totally different sounds while you're jamming. So like, if you need to get to a lead sound, you should have, your whatever sound your normal sound is and your lead sound should be side by side, or 2 of the 4 that are right there.
So
and then if you have another song you need to go to, a third one.
Yeah, you're programming it for specific effects for certain pedals. And when I'm on one, I'm in solo mode. When I'm on two, I'm in rhythm mode.
Yeah, for this type of a song, or for that type of a song. Like for a heavier metal or a heavier rock song, it might be a totally different patch. But that's the other thing is I have, I think it's got 32 banks or whatever, and then you can do another, or 64, and then there's an additional that many that you can do all user banks. So I could say, okay, I want to bring 3A down here, and we'll make that 33A, and I want to bring 27B over here as well, and make that B, and then I want to bring this one over.
If you're performing and you're playing with the band on stage, and you have one of these hot instruments, making the user banks for the every sound that I would need for a gig, I would put into a user bank, and if there is a hot patch, I might actually tweak it a little bit so it does match with the levels of everything else, because on stage you don't want to have to switch patches. And if you're especially if you're switching on the fly, like a guitarist tends to stomp and now they're playing this way in the middle of the song, you can't be adjusting your volume at that time.
Yeah, well, that's why they can do the adjustment with their finger, actually. You can ride the pinky down and do some volume adjusting there. But that is,
like
another
you
skill.
have the expression pedal. Like if you can adjust it and you're about to go into a hot patch, you're already pulling back as you switch.
Yep, or you dialed the patch down to get them equalized if you were doing that. But again, for this one, I probably wouldn't use the floor pod on stage. On stage, it would probably be better to go with a real, regular pedal board where you have this pedal for this and this pedal for that, and have it all broken out as individual pedals. A lot of people don't like to go with the combo pedal unless it's one of the high-end combo pedals that you get out there, like the Head Rush and the Helixes and things.
If I was a guitarist or a bassist on stage, I think I'd rather have individual stomp boxes. Silly as it sounds, I mean, there's more points of failure, but at the same time, there's less points of failure, because if everything's coming off of one effects processor and that thing craps out, guess what?
You're done. Yeah, exactly.
I might be able to still play my bass without one pedal, but if you take all my pedals away...
And technically, I can play my bass with no pedals. And same thing with guitars. Like, there's a lot of gigs that I've done with Joey where he doesn't bring any pedals for guitar, because he can do all the sounds that he needs to get. He can get from his fingers, the pick, and the guitar and the amp.
And he's getting his tone from the amp.
Yeah, the amp and the guitar, and again, the attack. I mean, it's all experience at that point, where you know the song well enough, you know what it sounds like, and he knows how to get that sound from the equipment that he brings with him. He'll usually bring several guitars, so that he might, it'll be a Les Paul at this one, and he'll use a Strat for that one, or whatever. Like, he'll have different guitars for different sounds for different songs. But sometimes he just cycles through the guitars because he just wants to use, some of the other guitars that are in the house. Like, I haven't used that one in a while, and break that one out, and it's got a different feel to it.
If I could only use one, I'll take the Strat. If
I
can only eat one chip.
That's the thing, is I don't think you could get him to agree to any one. You can't cut him down to one from like 30 or whatever guitars he has. I mean, that would be a tough call. But there are some of the other ones that, like some of the guys that we watched, whether it was Paul or Stitch Method. Somebody had one on the, if you had to cut down to 5 guitars, right? Like, what would the 5 guitars be that you could, if you were to allow yourself 5?
Well,
and I was like, okay, well,
if you were trying to duplicate a certain sound, your guitar pick, if you wanted to have the Gilmore sound, I would hope you'd pick the right guitar for the job.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you would want the Strat for sure. I mean, there's all kinds of times where you would want,
You want to be Eric Clapton? You better have a Strat.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it all depends who you want to sound. You want to sound like Angus Young, maybe have an SG. It's all, but you can get different sounds out of other guitars. Like somebody was saying, can you play metal on a Strat? Can you play metal on a Telecaster? Can you, and then going through different options.
You get a different tone to the metal presets. If you're running it through a Strat, Strats are pluckier. They have a brightness to them that makes them distinct. But if that brightness doesn't complement, the tone you're trying to get, I wouldn't necessarily want a plucky guitar for some of the metal.
And you'd be talking the Telecaster, and that's actually one of the ones that they did for the videos.
Telecasters are hugely popular.
I want to say it was the Thoman's guitars where we saw Julia and the bass parts that she did, Earth, Wind, and Fire, that time. Same channel, but two different guys that do different things. Where they were saying, "Oh, get all the sounds from a Strat, or get all the sounds from a Telecaster, or get all the sounds from an SG." Where they go through. If I wanted to play something clean, I would do this kind of thing, and they talk about I roll the tone to this, and I roll the volume to that, and I play on the clean channel here. And like if they use any pedals, they're trying to use ones that are very reachable. They're not using like the $5,000 pedal. They're just using if I'm going to use a compressor, I'm going to use this one. If I'm going to use distortion, I'm going to use that one, right? But they were showing that they can achieve all the sounds with just dial in like this, and then play like this, and when they're able to play all the sounds just using one instrument, like a Telecaster, like that.
Yeah, and Telecasters were popular mainly because they're so modifiable. Like the hackers and the ones who actually want to tweak up their instruments, Telecasters were made for that.
Mm-hmm. Technically, I think any guitar is made for that. Any guitar is fun to do that with, but
yes,
some are easier to work on than others, for sure.
In the old days, like not all guitars were built for people to go ripping apart, especially back in the 60s.
And actually, one of the things I had over here was, I think we showed it once before, was the pre-wired pick guard. So basically, it's a Strat style 3-pickup pick guard with the pickups already on it, already wired. The only things I really would have to do is put it in a guitar and connect it to the jack where you plug in.
Oh yeah, the Zeppelin is a Teddy.
Ah, there you go.
Oh, and I will have a Zepp surprise this weekend.
Nice.
Just to let you know, Uni. He's got me getting my Zepp on.
That's
thought I had done all the essentials, like the bucket list Zepp tunes, but got a special request.
There's more.
Got a special request, and this one's a hard fucker though, taking me a couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few that I would request for sure. One of the ones would be the Rover. I don't know if that's one that's commonly done. The Rover.
No, that's not.
That's worth a look.
I shall look.
Yeah, we'll go listen to that a little bit, because that is one of my favorites for sure. The Rover. There's Achilles' Last Stand maybe as well. Some of the ones that are, I guess, deeper cuts, or ones that might not be ones that people would be as familiar with, but they're just so good. I mean, I've got accustomed to listening to a lot of Zepp.
I tackled the first 4 albums. Most of those at one point or another I looked at.
Yeah. I've been to London, yeah. Exactly.
Well, we almost got a little bit of a guitar night tonight.
Yeah, a little bit.
There.
Little tease.
Guitar night is coming. All you guitarists out there, if you're interested, get in touch with us. We're going to have a dedicated guitar night. I want to talk about toys.
Yep. Tonight we hit a couple of them with a little bit of introduction to Stitch, a little bit of introduction to Paul Davids, a little bit of just playing around a little bit with our guitar or my guitar and our keyboards. But we can do more of that, and again we'll get more into the theory side of it as well. Like I'll have some more of the visuals from some of those, whether it's the circle of fifths or like the those charts I was showing you before that kind of relate the chord shapes to the pentatonics to the scales, all of those. But yeah, now I'm definitely itching to hear some Zeppelin now, so we're gonna have to go listen to some after the show. Throw on a couple of tunes, because there are some good ones. Whether Houses of the Holy, Physical Graffiti, just oh my god.
Yeah, see now, you're going into the albums that these were the next ones that I was wanting to jump on.
There's a good reason, yeah. But the Rover is the one that one I could literally at one point I would get into the car and I could always hit that song and just go, like anytime, anywhere, like just love it. One of those driving songs for me, but for sure. But we got us to it's like 10 after 12. I wasn't sure if we want to do that. Probably not going to do that last video for today. We'll probably save that one for next time.
Yeah, we'll hold that off for next week, and we've got our 3-hour chunks we're going to have to chop up.
Sounds good. But it worked out very nicely. I appreciate it, as always, Tony. And fun playing, fun hanging out, fun talking about stuff. Definitely picked up some good things. Again, got to digest some of that stuff from Stitch and Paul.
Yeah, the Gilmore technique soaked in. As soon as he
Mm-hmm.
started talking percussive.
Yeah, it's about how you think about the notes and the phrasing. The phrasing is the word, really, the word of the day, phrasing.
Yeah, and the EQ tips. On that
very
video,
cool. Mm-hmm.
I'm about to apply those.
And I got to start watching my own EQ when I'm talking, just to see whether I am like landing in that 100 hertz zone, or if I am landing in that like 80 hertz zone, like see where my formants are landing.
I wouldn't be surprised if you're like perfect 100.
Right in that area, and then see they like dial it down and see what it sounds like if we pull all of that out. He's like, "Oh, they're talking like this."
Yeah, turn him into Glenzilla.
Yep, change it all up. But thanks for hanging out with us, Uni, and everybody else. Janaya, everybody. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for the jam, everyone. A lot of fun.
And we'll catch you next time on Talking Shh. IT with Glenn and Tony.
All right.
Ambient noise, yeah.
So now you're grabbing some band lab clips.
Now for me that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, like stretching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the right
I
spot.
didn't even notice 40. I didn't even realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.